Chapter 267. Athena's shield was placed in front of her without hesitation. Yamu's delicate body was completely curled up behind the shield. The golden shield was struck by the cosmic comet, which was filled with the light of the sun, moon, and stars. There was a deafening sound accompanied by the shattering of the shield and countless golden specks of light exploding in midair. Amidst the deafening sound, Yamu was sent flying with blood spurting out of her mouth. The Athena's shield on her left hand had completely shattered and turned into specks of golden light that disappeared in midair. Fine cracks also appeared on the armor on her chest. The cosmic comet had severely injured Yamu under the powerful and sharp energy of the Xianyuan divine sword. Qiyu's body froze in midair. The golden light ball created by their continuous attacks had completely disappeared. He was panting heavily. It was important to know how difficult it was to obtain this last opportunity. Compared to Qiyu, Yamu was clearly much calmer. In order to find this opportunity, Qiyu had paid the price of 18 wounds on his body. Although the Athena's shield had been shattered, it had also completed its mission. It was powerful enough to dissipate more than 90% of the cosmic comet's energy. Qiyu had destroyed one of his opponent's divine weapons at the cost of his own injuries. He had also injured Yamu quite badly. At this moment they were even again. The solar lunisolar star armor on Qiyu's body had been damaged in many places. Although there was no blood flowing out, one could tell from his pale face that he was in a very bad condition. The solar lunisolar star armor was indeed not something that the solar lunisolar star armor could withstand. The sharp energy was still wreaking havoc in his body. Coupled with the fact that he had forcefully used the immortal domain and the second skill of the Xianyuan 8 laws, the energy in his body had been reduced to a frightening level. Yamu was not much stronger than Qiyu. The destruction of the Athena's shield had been followed by. Her left arm had completely lost the ability to fight. At the same time, the cracks on the breastplate greatly reduced the defense of Athena's armor. The powerful energy of Xuanyuan's sword made Yamu's body feel like it was being torn apart. Although her injury was lighter than Qiyu's, it was not by much. Due to the destruction of a divine artifact, his energy consumption was even greater than Qiyu's. The water thundercloud force quickly healed the internal injuries under the effect of the nature source. After 3 collisions, Qiyu and Yamu had to stop and observe each other's condition. They were all waiting for the next collision. Perhaps, in the next clash, the final victor would be decided. Yamu panted as she looked at Qiyu. The light in her beautiful eyes had already dimmed. The holy light on his body also thinned. He said calmly, "What a strong Xianyuan divine sword. No wonder it's the #1 weapon in the East." Qiyu said indifferently, "Your Athena's spear is also not bad. It's one of the few divine artifacts that can withstand the attack of Xuanyuan's sword." Yamu shook his head lightly and said, "In terms of defense, Athena's spear is no weaker than Xuanyuan's sword. However, in terms of attack, it's much weaker. Can't you see it? Athena's spear can withstand the attack of Xuanyuan's sword because Athena's armor is one with it. That was because the armor of Athena was originally one with it, and it helped it block a lot of the Xianyuan sword's attack. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have lost. Can you tell me how you did it just now? Why did my attack suddenly lose its effect? I can feel that my spiritual power and energy were completely locked on to you. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to break free from my attack." Qiyu nodded and said, "That's right. It's true that I couldn't break free from your attack. However, in front of my special domain, any attack will instantly lose its effect. That is the undying domain. The divine artifact in my left hand is one of the 10 great Eastern divine artifacts, the Kongtong seal. The same method obviously wouldn't work the second time." Qiyu had his own pride. He didn't hide anything and directly told Yamu about the undying domain. Yamu was slightly taken aback. "Undying domain? What a undying domain! I understand now. No wonder you were able to turn the tables despite being at a disadvantage. We're back on the same starting line. As she spoke, she raised the spear of Athena in her hand again. Having benefited from the energy source of nature, she knew very well that in terms of energy recovery, she couldn't compare to Chiyu. The more time she wasted, the more advantageous it would be for Chiyu. She had to attack while she still had enough energy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any more chances if he continued like this. However, would Chiyu give her such a chance? The answer was no. Chiyu's injuries were much more serious than Yamu's. What he needed the most now was time to heal his injuries and gather energy. Even if he raised both attributes of the thundercloud force to the 8 clouds realm, it was still too much for him. 5 rays of light lit up at the same time. Along with 5 dragon roars, 5 huge figures blocked in front of Yamu. Chiyu wouldn't give Yamu the chance to deal with the undying mystical dragon. After the 5 elements divine dragons appeared, they didn't attack directly. Instead, they gathered together and breathed out at the same time. The 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth condensed in the air and attacked Yamu together. Yamu was shocked to see 5 dragons that were more than 30 meters long suddenly appear in front of her. She didn't expect Chiyu to have such a treasure. However, at this moment, as the goddess of war and wisdom, Yamu's power was fully displayed. She raised the spear of Athena in her hand and waved it gently. She used a technique that she hadn't used before. Athena's spear transformed in the air. Everywhere the spear passed, it transformed into countless light spots. They weren't simple light spots, but rays of light that resembled starlight. When the first wave of light spots appeared, the pattern of the white demonic constellation appeared in the air. Spatial prism. The special ability of the white demonic constellation appeared in the air. It forcefully reflected the attacks of the 5 elements divine dragons to one side. That's right. Under the effect of the spear of Athena, Yamu could use the special ability of any constellation guardian. Although these complicated skills wouldn't have any special effect against Chiyu's Xianyuan sword attack. But it was perfect against the 5 elements divine dragons. As the goddess of war and wisdom, how could she be so easy to deal with? Golden light flashed. Yamu completely injected the divine energy into the spear of Athena and faced the 5 elements divine dragons. Chiyu took advantage of the opportunity when the 5 elements divine dragons were entangled with Yamu to quickly adjust his energy and heal his injuries. Yamu's body looked so petite compared to the 5 undying divine dragons, but Athena's spear emitted rays of golden light that repelled the 5 elements divine dragons again and again. Under the illusion of the spear of Athena, the energy of the 12 guardians of the constellations continuously appeared around her body, although the 5 elements divine dragon's 5 elements combination attack was extraordinary. But in front of her, it was very difficult to bring out its full effect. As time went by, Yamu had already seen through the secret of the 5 elements divine dragon. 5 rays of light floated out. He did not attack every single undying god dragon, but focused his energy on the earth element undying god dragon's body. It was better to break a finger than injuring 5 fingers. Yamu's choice was the same as Chiyu's, but with the power of the divine weapon, it was easier for her to deal with it. Those 5 rays of light were the Shura blades that Athena had unleashed. It was so powerful that it was definitely not something that Miero could compare to. The yellow light turned into mist and disappeared. The 5 elements divine dragon's attack was broken. This was a rare opportunity. Yamu immediately launched a storm-like attack. The earth element divine dragon of the 5 elements divine dragons was broken. Their overall attack power was greatly reduced. Faced with Yamu's storm-like attack, they were almost unable to hold on. After all, they were energy bodies. The sharpness of Athena's spear would cause great damage to them. This was also the reason why Yinling did not allow Chiyu to use the Xianyuan sword to pass the test. Divine weapons could cause great damage to energy bodies. This was because energy bodies themselves were centered around mental strength. When faced with offensive divine weapons like the Xianyuan's sword and Athena's spear, as long as the user had enough energy, it was not difficult to break the 5 elements divine dragon's attack. Of course, if the 5 elements divine dragon's attack power was displayed in a group battle, the effect would be different. If Yamu had not completely inherited Athena's power, she would not be able to face them so easily. When the other 4 immortal dragons were destroyed, Chi-Yu moved. He could not let Yamu accumulate energy and charge forward. At the same time, the 5 elements divine dragons needed the help of the Kongtong seal's energy to recover. The Xianyuan sword shone with a golden light as it met Yamu's Athena's spear. Once again, the two of them were close to each other. The golden light was clearly not as bright as before, and Chi-Yu's body had also become much slower than before. Due to the great consumption of energy from their all-out attacks, and their injuries being amplified by the energy produced by their opponent's divine weapon, the Zodiac King and Athena were now like arrows at the end of their flight. Yamu's injuries were not as serious as Chi-Yu had imagined, and Chi-Yu's recovery was not as good as he had expected. The sharp energy of Athena's spear was causing continuous damage to his body. Therefore, the moment the two of them clashed again, Chi-Yu was forced into a disadvantageous position. However, Yamu's advantage did not last for long. When the 5 elements divine dragons returned, the battle returned to a balanced state. Without absolute energy, techniques became more important. In order to save some energy, Chi-Yu gave up on the cosmic crimson golden armor. At the same time, the energy in his body suddenly erupted, and the characteristics of the 4 thundercloud force began to show. With the help of the source of nature, the thundercloud force was the first to attack. The wind at an altitude of 10,000 meters was completely different from the wind on the ground. Even without energy, the wind was as sharp as a knife. A green light bloomed like never before, assisting Chi-Yu to increase his movement speed to the limit. The water thundercloud force healed his injuries, and the purple lightning and the fiery red Kirin's true fire became his main means of attack. With the combination of these two, they were evenly matched with the 12 star constellations that Yamu constantly conjured. There was no possibility of the two of them being separated from each other in this battle. As time went on, the energy in their bodies was rapidly decreasing. Although the 5 elements divine dragons was a skill from the Kongtong seal, it also required Chi-Yu's energy to activate. Therefore, Chi-Yu's energy consumption was no less than Yamu's. As the two of them consumed their energy at the same time, their attacks became weaker and the intensity of the battle also decreased rapidly. Whether it was the Xianyuan divine sword or Athena's spear, all that could be displayed in front of them at this time had returned to their original forms and could not release energy. Time passed by unknowingly. The two people in the sky were still fighting with all their might. The dark battle caused the 24 spectators on the ground to feel pain in their neck. They knew that although the energy of both parties had fallen to the lowest point, this was the final critical moment. As long as one of them could not hold on first, then the one who would lose his life would be the one who would die. With a loud bang, Chi-Yu was sent flying by Yamu's spear. She had completely inherited Athena's divine sword, so her overall energy was a little higher than Chi-Yu's. At this time, Chi-Yu's energy was extremely insufficient, and the 5 elements divine dragons could not hold on any longer. No matter how good a divine weapon was, it needed energy to activate. Looking at Chi-Yu's falling body, he could not even maintain his flight. A glint of tears flashed in Yamu's eyes. The sharp triangular golden light appeared again, chasing after Chi-Yu's falling body, and piercing towards his chest. Ryue, Ming-Ming, and the other Zodiac Guardian warriors exclaimed at the same time. At this time, they could not care about the agreement anymore, and almost immediately soared into the air, wanting to save Chi-Yu. However, there were still 12 Zodiac Guardians opposite the Zodiac Guardian warriors. In an instant, a chaotic battle began. Under the leadership of Mephisto and Nimbus, the Zodiac Guardians launched an all-out attack, fighting against the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Their goal was simple, and that was to stall the Zodiac Guardian warriors in front of them before Yamu destroyed Chi-Yu. After going all out, they had indeed achieved their goal. The sharp energy had already reached his chest, and Chi-Yu could even feel the call of the Grim Reaper, but his eyes were still so calm. He knew that Yamu would not be merciful, and this could be seen from the aura emitted from her body. And what Chi-Yu hoped for was an absolutely fair battle. Did he really lose? Did he really lose without the help of the 5 elements divine dragon? The answer was, of course, no. Although Chi-Yu would not use the Bull Demon King's strength to fight against Yamu, he still had another messenger. A golden light suddenly rose, and Chi-Yu's body flew diagonally, instantly widening the distance between him and Yamu. The 15-meter wide wings spread out, and a loud cry accompanied by a strong energy wave appeared around Chi-Yu's body. The golden-winged Great Ping appeared. As the son of the Great Ping Wisdom King, he was extremely powerful. Especially in terms of flying speed, he was the best among the beasts. Yamu's attack had failed. If she was in her normal state, it would not be difficult for her to destroy Little Ping. However, at this moment, she had used up a lot of energy, and this was the first time in her life that she was close to exhaustion. How could she catch up to Little Ping's ability to soar 90,000 miles in the sky? Hovering in the air, Yamu panted heavily as she absorbed the energy molecules in the air to recover. At the same time, her heart was filled with surprise. Chi-Yu had brought her endless surprises. At this moment, the golden-winged Great Ping's energy wave was actually not weaker than her own. The battle was not over yet. Chi-Yu sat cross-legged on Little Ping's back. He only gave Little Ping one order, and that was not to fight head-on, but to only evade his opponent's attack. Now, he and Yamu were not competing in terms of strength, but in terms of recovery. Whoever recovered faster would be the one to win. As the goddess of war and wisdom, in addition to her powerful combat power, Yamu also had a calm mind. She clearly felt that she could not catch up to Little Ping, so she simply did not chase after him. She floated in the air, and quickly recovered her energy. At the same time, her mind was racing as she considered the current battle situation. Although there was plenty of light in the sky, allowing her to recover quickly, she still needed to maintain her flying state and see how much energy she expended. Naturally, she was a little bigger than Chi-Yu, who was sitting on Little Ping's back. At the same time, Chi-Yu was the source of nature. His recovery speed was definitely above her. If she stopped in such a situation, then the final result was already determined. Yamu could not wait. She knew that. The longer it took, the more disadvantageous it would be for her. In that case, there would be no possibility of victory. Therefore, when the two of them were in a stalemate, when Yamu's energy recovered to about 20%, she moved. She did not chase after Little Ping. The Athena spear in her hand suddenly turned into a clear golden light and was thrown out without warning. Like a javelin, it went straight to Little Ping's body. She could only destroy the golden-winged eagle under Chi-Yu first. Then the battle could continue. Little Ping's flying speed was very fast, and his strength was strong enough. However, in the face of a relic, his strength was still lacking. The Athena spear was completely locked on. In an instant, it broke through the 9 layers of defense and came to his lower abdomen. The light of the sun, moon, and stars condensed. With a loud clang, Chi-Yu diverted the Athena spear. However, at this time, his strength was really not enough. He did not knock away the spear that Yamu concentrated with all her strength. Little Ping screamed in pain. One of his wings had been pierced by the Athena spear. At the same time, his protective energy was broken, and he suddenly lost his balance in the air. With a flash of light, Chi-Yu kept Little Ping back into his body. Using this short period of time, his physical condition had recovered a little. Regardless of the numerous wounds on his body, he directly flew towards Yamu. After the Athena spear pierced Little Ping's wing, it drew a beautiful arc in the air and returned to Yamu's hand. She had also taken a great risk with the attack just now. If she could not make Little Pung lose its combat power, then she, who had consumed a lot of energy, would certainly not be able to fight against the combination of Chi Yu and Little Pung. Floating down, Yamu directly landed on Mount Everest below. Naturally, Chi Yu understood Yamu's approach. At this moment, the battle in the air was no longer suitable for them. After all, without enough energy to support, even the final winner would not be able to escape the fate of falling to their death if they were to fight 10,000 meters in the air. The battle between the Zodiac Guardian warriors and the Zodiac Guardians came to an abrupt end with the two's descent. Returning to their original position, they could only watch as Chi Yu and Yamu's bodies fell down. As soon as Yamu's feet touched the ground, her delicate body suddenly turned around gracefully. Using the length of the Athena spear, she pierced through the air towards the falling Chi Yu's chest. A faint cold light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. Looking at the golden light of the spear, he did not dodge, because for him, changing positions in the air was a little difficult. The tip of the Xianyuan sword collided with the Athena spear in the air, causing a little golden spark. Chi Yu's body froze in the air, the tip of the spear and the tip of the sword collided with each other. The energy between the two divine weapons collided, producing a sizzling sound, and waves of energy continuously dispersed to the surroundings. This caused the Zodiac Guardian warriors and the Zodiac Guardians to be shocked at the same time. Even under the situation where most of the energy was consumed, the two people in front of them were still so strong. If the battle in the air had happened here, perhaps the world's highest peak would really not exist. With a loud bang, Chi Yu's body spun in the air and landed in front of his own camp. Yamu's slender legs were knee-deep in the ground, and both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Their swaying bodies looked a little weary. Chi Yu staggered a few steps back, using the Xianyuan sword to stab into the ground to stabilize his body. Yamu's face also became unprecedentedly pale. Looking at each other, they both gasped for breath. At this moment, they had already lost the strength to activate their divine weapons again. A draw. The battle between the goddess Athena and the Zodiac King had actually ended in a draw, and it was a real draw. Their combined strength was actually completely equal. Unless they sacrificed their life force to attack, they could only accept this result. Chi Yu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in a deep voice, "It seems that the battle between us will really have to be carried out between teams." Yamu nodded slowly and said, "This time, the signs of the Zodiac's domain can be seen." Chi Yu smiled indifferently and said, "Then let me see. Which of our domains is stronger?" Both of them did the same thing at almost the same time, sitting cross-legged on the ground. In order to unleash the power of their respective domains, they first had to recover their condition. Otherwise, as the core of the domains, without them, the domains could be said to not exist. Just as Chi Yu sat cross-legged, he suddenly heard Yamu let out a soft cry of surprise. Instinctively, he opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Yamu. Suddenly, a slender bracelet on Yamu's right hand suddenly lit up, flashing with a faint golden light. Yamu's pale face changed slightly. She frowned and whispered something to Mephisto, who was beside her. Mephisto hurriedly passed a satellite phone to Yamu. Chi Yu could not help but feel a little strange. The battle between them had reached this point and had entered the final stage. At such a critical moment, she did not hurry to recover her strength, but instead made a phone call. Was she not afraid that she would fail because of insufficient energy recovery? Yamu quickly made the call. Her spiritual power condensed into a layer of barrier, so that Chi Yu could not hear her conversation from the other side. However, Chi Yu could clearly see that after Yamu said a few words, her delicate body was trembling slightly, and her eyes were flashing with a shocked light. This was the first time that Chi Yu could remember seeing such an expression on Yamu's face. He could not think of anything that could shock this goddess Athena so much. Yamu slowly stood up with Yu Yun's support, using Athena's spear to support her body as she walked towards Chi Yu. Ryua helped Chi Yu up. At that moment they both felt a little strange. What was Yamu trying to do now? What did that phone call tell her? Chi-yu, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid we can't continue the battle. A hint of bitterness appeared in Yamu's eyes. Of course, Chi-yu would not ask a silly question like whether she was going to retreat. He only said calmly, "Give me a reason." It was not easy for the opportunity for revenge to come, and he would not give it up so easily. Yamu's eyes revealed a strong sense of worry. The crisis has come early. I have to rush back to Greece with my companions. We have to prepare a countermeasure. Chi-yu was startled and asked, "What? Is hell coming early?" Yamu's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. "You also know that hell is coming?" "But that's not the case. This matter is much worse than hell. If hell is coming, we might be able to resist it. However, if this really happens, it will be a devastating disaster for the entire human race." Hearing Yamu's words, Chi-yu suddenly became nervous. He was still very calm when it came to major issues. He would never ignore the safety of the whole world because of his personal grudge. "What is it?" Yamu said. "The American Satellite Observatory sent a message. In 37 days, an asteroid about 170 the size of Earth will hit Earth." As soon as she said this, the Zodiac Guardian warriors, including Chi-yu, immediately exclaimed, "Huh? An asteroid hitting Earth?" This seemed to only appear in novels, but it was actually said by Yamu. Hu Guang said angrily, "Are you serious, Miss Goddess? How can you make up such a ridiculous reason? Just say that you're afraid of fighting." Guan Ping said discontentedly, "So what if it's ridiculous? It's ridiculous. About this I forgot. You're a lion mastiff, not a dog." Yamu ignored Hu Guang and stared at Chi-yu. "If you don't believe me, immediately call the relevant agencies in your country. I think they should have already received the news. Chi-yu, this is a crisis that concerns the whole world. Can we put aside our personal grudges first? Our country needs us the most." Chi-yu nodded to Yamu, took out the phone from the Kongtong seal, and quickly dialed General Ji Zhongming's number. "Uncle, I'm Chi-yu. Did something happen?" Ji Zhongming sounded very noisy on the other side, as if many people were discussing something. When Ji Zhongming heard that it was Chi-yu, he quickly said, "Yes, something big happened. I was just about to look for you. If it's possible, hurry to the Yellow Flame Soul headquarters. I've arranged for someone to bring you here. Chi-yu, this concerns our country and even the whole world. You have to come back." This was the first time he used such a commanding tone on Chi-yu. "Okay, I got it. I'll come back as soon as I can." After hanging up, Chi-yu's expression became serious. He knew that Yamu did not lie to him. Something big had really happened. "Yamu, today's battle is not over. After this crisis is over, we'll continue. 37 days is the time for us to prepare. I hope that you and I can contribute to the country in this matter." Yamu looked at Chi-yu, and a faint smile appeared on her pretty face. She said something that made one's imagination run wild. "You're a real man." Yamu was not in a hurry to leave. In her current condition, even if she walked, she would not be able to go far. She and Chi-yu cultivated at the top of Mount Everest for a full 3 hours before they recovered part of their energy and suppressed the injuries in their bodies. Neither of them said anything more. What was supposed to be a battle of life and death had ended in a dramatic way. However, at this time, neither of them was in the mood to think about this. The upcoming crisis was the biggest test for them. Watching Yamu and the others leave, Chi-yu could not help but smile bitterly. He thought to himself, Master, your predictions are really accurate. This is not the first time we're in danger. This is not the first time it's going to be so easy to solve. An asteroid that was 170 the size of Earth could only be resisted by the power of the country. Chi-yu brought the Zodiac Guardian God warriors back to Chang, and as fast as he could. He let everyone rest in the Dragon Field courtyard while he drove Ryua's Lamborghini to the headquarters of the Yellow Flame Soul faction. Through the main building, he was directly picked up by Tianhun. "Big brother Tianhun." Chi-yu looked at Tianhun, who had a very ugly expression. He wanted to ask something, but he held back. Tianhun looked very tired and his face was a little pale. Chiyu, this time something really big has happened. Let's go, we'll go through the secret passage to the National Space Administration. General Ji is also there. The two of them went through the secret passage of the Yellow Flame Soul Faction headquarters and got on a special military vehicle. Under Tianhuan's driving, they went straight to the National Space Administration. Chapter 268. Tianhun agreed first, then immediately reacted and said hoarsely, How? How did you know? This is top secret. Chiyu sighed in his heart. It seemed like his status in the Yanhuang Republic was still far from what Yamu was in Greece. She had informed him immediately, but now they still had to hide it from him. It's not convenient for me to tell you how I know, but is this true? Chiyu said in a low voice. Tianhun nodded solemnly and said, No matter how you found out, this is indeed true. An asteroid will enter the Earth's atmosphere in 37 days. Judging from its current trajectory, it will hit the Earth. Moreover, the location is very scary. It's the Pacific Ocean. If the asteroid hits the Pacific Ocean, then even though it's only 1/70th the size of Earth, the powerful impact will definitely cause Earth to deviate from its orbit. At the same time, all living things on Earth will become extinct because of this devastating disaster. 1/70th. It's not much smaller than the moon. Can you imagine it? Chiyu would rather Yamu had lied to him again than to know this truth. However, the truth was right in front of him. What do we do now? How does Yanhuang plan to deal with it? Tianhun smiled bitterly and said, How else can we deal with it? Now the leaders of various countries are in close discussion. This is no longer a problem for one country, but a problem for the entire human race. Within 37 days, we have to come up with an effective countermeasure. Otherwise, human civilization will be destroyed. There is only one feasible solution now, and it's also our only chance. That is to deviate the orbit of the asteroid and not coincide with Earth's orbit. In that case, as long as it deviates from Earth's orbit, it won't hit Earth. All the problems will be solved. Currently, the United States has already sent out a space exploration plane to fly in the direction of the asteroid. Once the composition of the asteroid is obtained, the final preparations of the various countries will immediately begin. Chiyu scratched his head and said, I don't understand all this, Big Brother Tianhun. You just need to tell me, how likely is it that we can deviate this asteroid from its orbit? Tianhun solemnly looked at Chiyu and said, I don't know. If the structure of this small planet is very loose, if the composition isn't heavy metal, we have a 70% chance of success. Otherwise, we only have a 30% chance. The most powerful weapon in the world was undoubtedly the nuclear bomb. However, a large number of nuclear bombs exploded, even in outer space. Could not be too close to Earth, otherwise the shock wave would have a drastic impact on Earth's climate. Therefore, the ground bombardment had to be carried out in outer space. Adding up the number of nuclear bombs in each country, there were about 15,000 of them, but it was impossible to use all of them. This was because there were very few intercontinental missiles that could reach outer space. There were only about 400 of them in the entire world. Even if the entire world worked together, they could only gather 500 of them before the asteroid arrived to load the most powerful nuclear bomb. Whether these 500 nuclear bombs can knock the asteroid out of its orbit will determine whether we can continue to survive. Chiyu frowned. I seem to have heard that all the nuclear bombs in the world are enough to destroy the entire Earth. Why can't we do anything to an asteroid that's only 1/70th the size of Earth? Tianhun rolled his eyes and said, Boss, there's a problem with your understanding. Destroying Earth means destroying all living things on Earth. Earth will be shrouded in radiation. It doesn't mean blowing up Earth. Earth is so big. Although the power of the nuclear bomb is not small, I'm afraid it won't be able to penetrate the Earth's crust. Destroying an asteroid and destroying Earth are two completely different concepts. We have to try our best to blow it up or make it deviate from its orbit. As for what's on its surface, it has nothing to do with us. Now, we just hope that the asteroid doesn't contain too much heavy metal. Otherwise, we might really be finished. Chiyu was stunned for a moment before he understood. He said with some embarrassment, "I'm illiterate, Big Brother Tianhun. We can only continue to wait. Why did General Ji ask me to come back?" Tianhuan's expression changed, and he said, "You should ask the general yourself. It's not convenient for me to tell you." Soon, they arrived at the National Space Administration. Tianhun had a special pass in his car, so they didn't encounter any obstacles. When Tianhun brought Chiyu to a hall, even Chiyu couldn't help but be secretly surprised. There was a huge screen in the middle of the hall, and many things that Chiyu couldn't understand were displayed on it. However, he could recognize the stars on the shoulders of the people standing in the hall. They were at least senior colonels. The majority of them had general stars. Obviously, they were the military leaders of the Yanhuang Republic. Everyone looked very serious, and they kept discussing something with each other, causing the hall to be a little noisy. Tianhun asked Chiyu to stand there and wait for a while. He immediately went to find General Ji. Chiyu looked around. He was naturally very worried about the destruction of Earth. However, even a powerhouse like him couldn't possibly think that he could stop the disaster brought by the asteroid with his own strength. After all, no matter how strong a person was, there was still a limit. He couldn't go against the entire universe. Now, he could only hope that the various countries could unite to fight against this disaster. Master, your predictions are too strong. The first wave of disaster is already coming in this way. What can I, Kirin, do? Not long after, General Ji and Tianhun walked over together. The old man looked very serious and seemed to have aged a little. He looked at Chiyu, forced a smile and said, "Let's go. Follow me to the temporary meeting room." He patted Chiyu's shoulder affectionately and brought him to the temporary office set up by the National Space Administration. General Ji asked Tianhun to stand guard outside. Without his orders, no one was allowed to come in and disturb them. "Just now, Tianhun told me that he has already told you the general situation," General Ji said seriously. Chiyu nodded and said, "Yes, I already know." General Ji said, "First of all, this matter definitely can't be spread. Right now, the entire matter is still strictly confidential. This is to prevent the public from panicking." Chiyu said, "I understand. Don't worry. Uncle, what did you call me here for?" General Ji sighed and said, "Originally, I didn't want to rely on you guys. However, as the owner of the Diamond Guardian medal, when a national disaster comes, we really need you to step forward." After the chairman consulted with the State Council, he decided to temporarily send you to the Yanhuang Seoul to carry out a special mission with it. Chiyu said, "Uncle, I heard from Big Brother Tianhun that nuclear bombs are needed to solve the problem this time. What can I do?" "You're not asking me to steal nuclear bombs from other countries, are you?" "I think so. In the face of a calamity that threatens the entire human race, those powerful countries won't be selfish anymore." General Ji nodded and said, "That's right. Facing the upcoming disaster, the various countries are unprecedentedly united. The United States, which has always been the hegemon, is the most nervous. Not only did they announce the extent of their detection and the number of nuclear bombs they have, but they also shared their technological advantage with other countries. It was for the sake of surviving this crisis. The mission you're about to carry out is extremely dangerous. I called you here today to ask for your opinion. If you're not willing, even if I have to lose a few stars on my shoulders, I'll do my best to fight for it for you." Chiyu didn't directly answer whether he agreed or not. He said calmly, "Uncle, what kind of mission is it? I need to know the specifics before I can decide." General Ji said, "It's like this. The number of intercontinental missiles in each country is very limited. Furthermore, among these intercontinental missiles, there are even fewer that can really hit that small planet at a sufficient distance. Our biggest problem now is that we can't unleash the power of a large number of nuclear bombs. Therefore, after the discussion between the various countries, no matter what the composition of that small planet is, we have to make first-hand preparations. Since the nuclear bombs can't be launched with intercontinental missiles, we have to send a spacecraft to launch the nuclear bomb at close range and detonate it on the small planet. The spacecraft can't be launched too close, because no matter how small the small planet's density is, it has a strong gravitational force. Once the spacecraft is attracted to it, the power of the nuclear bomb might not be able to be unleashed. Therefore, after the discussion between the various countries, they decided to use manpower to trigger the detonation of the nuclear bomb. The United States has developed a special device that can be worn by a person and used to launch the nuclear bomb. In other words, the mission this time is for you to take the spacecraft to outer space, and after you're a certain distance away from the small planet, the spacecraft will launch you. When the small planet arrives, you'll have to launch the nuclear bomb on you to play a key role. After hearing General G's words, Chi-Yu couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Although General G didn't say it explicitly, he could understand that this was obviously a suicide attack. Using one's body to launch the nuclear bomb, not to mention whether one would be affected by the nuclear bomb due to the close distance, just the various changes in the universe and the gravitational force produced by the small planet were already a huge problem. This was no longer a problem of survival. The chances of survival might not even be 1 in 1,000. However, this was also the only solution for the current problem. General G couldn't help but sigh when he saw the slight change in Chi-Yu's expression. He said, "Of course, if the intercontinental missiles can successfully divert the small planet's orbit with the power of the nuclear bomb, you won't need to carry out the next step of the operation. However, in order to prepare for a rainy day, we have to be prepared. Our country has the third largest number of nuclear bombs in the world. For the sake of the world's safety, we are duty-bound. The weight of the nuclear bomb developed by the United States exceeds 500 kilograms, which is definitely not something that ordinary people can carry. Even among the soul of Yen Huang, only a small number of people can do it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have considered you. Chi-Yu, go back and think about it. Give me a clear answer in 10 days. Chi-Yu smiled and shook his head. Uncle, there's no need for 10 days. I'll give you an answer now. I'm willing to go. These 4 simple words expressed Chi-Yu's determination. General G's eyes couldn't help but moisten when he saw his resolute gaze. This general who had spent his entire life in the military said in a trembling voice, Chi-Yu, why you're really willing to go? But, Ming Ming, Chi-Yu smiled faintly and said, Uncle, don't tell Ming Ming anything before I set off. Or, when the country needs us, all the Zodiac Guardian God warriors are willing to sacrifice their lives for the country. If the Earth is destroyed, we won't be the only ones who will die. Moreover, we might not necessarily die during this operation, right? There will always be a chance. I'm willing to go. Uncle, please tell the officer in charge of this operation that I'll definitely report to him before we set off. Ji Zhongming suddenly stood up. His old age didn't affect his upright posture. He gave Chi-Yu a standard military salute. Tears glistened in his eyes as he looked at Chi-Yu. He was so choked up that he couldn't speak. Actually, Chi-Yu wasn't very worried. To others, this kind of mission might really be a death sentence, but to him, the chances of survival were much higher. After all, he was the powerful king of the Zodiac. Even if a nuclear bomb exploded at his feet, it wouldn't be able to kill him. The only thing that could pose a threat to him was the environment in outer space. From what General G had just described, this operation of using human bodies to explode could only be carried out when they were a certain distance away from the Earth. If the spacecraft didn't come to pick them up after the mission, Chi-Yu didn't know if he could fly back. Even if he could fly back, it would be a huge problem if he could use his physical strength to pass through the atmosphere. That was all he was thinking about now. When Chiyu returned to the Dragon Field courtyard, it was already late. In order to increase his chances of survival, he specifically asked Tianhun for a lot of information about this small planet. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll always be victorious. After looking through the information, he finally understood why this small planet had appeared so suddenly. It turned out that when the small planet entered the solar system, it was blocked by Pluto. After that, it brushed past Pluto and was blocked by a few other planets, so Earth's exploration satellites couldn't detect it. When they finally discovered it, it was already too late. The time left for humans was getting shorter and shorter. Chiyu, what's the situation? Everyone was waiting in the hall for Chiyu's return. They were all worried. After all, no one wanted to die. And the destruction of the Earth was definitely the most thorough death scenario. Chiyu told everyone about his journey and didn't hide anything from them. At this time, his strength was limited. For the sake of the entire Earth and the Yenhuang Republic, he had to tell his partners everything. As for how to do it, it was up to them to decide. After listening to Chiyu's description, everyone was relieved. Hummer gestured at the strong muscles on his arms and said, "Isn't it just 500 kilograms? I can make 5, no problem." Guan Ping nodded and said, "Then I'll do 6. Changjie said impatiently, "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? I'll do 7. Ruyue smiled and said, "All right, stop fighting. We'll talk about the details when the time comes. First of all, who doesn't want to participate in this operation, quickly stand up." Me. Guan Jing suddenly stood up and looked at everyone's strange eyes. She smiled and said, "I'll participate." F***ck, he was given more than 20 middle fingers. Even Modi, who always paid attention to his image, couldn't help but despise this guy. Chiyu laughed and said, "Aren't you always afraid of death? Why, you're not afraid this time?" Guan Jing said righteously, "That's right, I want to be a national hero. But, boss, can we discuss this with the country? If we come back victorious, are you going to give me 10 beauties and 10 handsome guys?" Chiyu glared at him and said, "Enough, you call yourself a national hero. I think you're more like a coward." Guan Jing smiled and said, "To be honest, I'd be lying if I said I'm not afraid of death. But isn't it just throwing a nuclear bomb? I don't think it's too dangerous. If that asteroid hits us, the Earth will be gone. Wouldn't that be even worse? It's better to take a risk. No matter what, I can fight for a chance for my parents to survive." Since Guan Jing had decided to go, no one else could refuse. Ruyue leaned on Chiyu's shoulder. "You don't need to worry about everyone. This operation would be suicidal for others, but not for us. We are not ordinary people, as the guardians of the East. This kind of situation is also the best time for us to display our usefulness. No one will back down. Chiyu, do you want to recall our 12 Zodiac team to undergo special training during the era of the ancient beasts? With the condition of their bodies, 500 kilograms was nothing. If that's the case, we have at least 100 people who can launch a nuclear attack. And then there was the Yen Huang Soul. The number of nuclear bombs can be maintained at a relatively high level, even exceeding the number of intercontinental missiles launched." After listening to Ryue's words, Chiyu couldn't help but have a strange thought. The 12th Zodiac team, yes. With more than 100 people, then the number of nuclear bombs would be greatly increased. However, would they be able to hold on? After all, compared to himself and the others, the ability of the 12th Zodiac team was much weaker. However, they had their own giant beast companion, the golden-winged eagle. With the golden-winged eagle's ability to fly, resisting the gravity of the asteroid shouldn't be too much of a problem. Thinking of this, Chiyu nodded and said, "Ming Ming, contact Uncle G. I'll go over later and ask him to get a spacesuit manufacturer to help us make some special spacesuit." Ming Ming was stunned for a moment and said, "Special spacesuits?" Her beautiful eyes lit up and she immediately reacted. "Okay, I understand. I'll go now." Chi-Yu smiled faintly as he thought to himself, since I've decided to go, I need to be fully prepared and maximize my chances of survival. At this moment, Snow Girl's voice suddenly came from upstairs. "Dad, you have a phone call." Her voice sounded a little cold, as if she was very unhappy. Chi-Yu flew upstairs and gave Snow Girl an inquiring look. Snow Girl said in a deep voice, "It's Yamu." Hearing that it was Yamu, Chi-Yu couldn't help but frown. Why is she looking for me? While thinking about it, he returned to his room and answered the phone. "What's the matter?" Chi-Yu asked directly. Yamu said, "Chi-Yu, you should already know about it. This is an important moment for the survival of Earth. I think the Zodiac Guardian warriors will also be asked to drop nuclear bombs on human bodies. Since Greece doesn't have a nuclear bomb, we weren't asked to help. However, the United States made a request and hoped that we could help them. I've already agreed. It is said that the Holy See has also agreed and is preparing to send a large number of people to participate in this operation." Chi-Yu said, "What do you mean by telling me this?" Yama was silent for a while before saying, "Chi-Yu, whether it is you or me, we don't want our partners to be hurt. Only by increasing our strength as much as possible can we have a greater chance of survival and also be able to better complete this mission. Therefore, I want to cooperate with you." Cooperation? Cooperation again? Chi-Yu couldn't help but sneer. "Forget it, I don't want to have an ally who can stab me at any time." Yamu said, "Chi-Yu, can't you trust me for once? This time is different. For the sake of Earth, we must cooperate closely. The most valuable spaceship in the world is in the United States. When the time comes, you will also have to take the same spaceship as us. If we can't cooperate with each other, I'm afraid it will cause serious consequences in the end. For the sake of Earth, can't you make a little sacrifice? It's just a temporary cooperation. After the cooperation, whether you want to fight or retaliate against us, I will accept it." Hearing Yamu's pleading voice, Chi-Yu gradually calmed down. He also knew that on this matter, it was impossible for Yamu to deceive him. Although he didn't want to admit it, what Yamu said was right. Only by improving the strength of both sides as much as possible could they have a greater chance of survival when carrying out this death mission. As for whether they could really survive, it depended on God's will. "Tell me, how do you want to cooperate?" Chi-Yu's tone became a little gentler. Hearing Chi-Yu's tone softened, Yama was overjoyed. She hurriedly said, "It's like this. Right now, there are 30 days left before the start of the mission. Within these 30 days, all the countries will be preparing intensely. For us, we also need to undergo some space emergency training. This can be carried out in the countries themselves. With our abilities, this kind of training will at most take 3 days. It will be enough for us to adapt to the situation in space. And the remaining time, besides the necessary preparations for carrying out the mission, is still very loose. I hope to use this time to train with the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. That's it. It will be beneficial for our cooperation in space and the improvement of our strength. If you agree, the Vatican also hopes to participate in our emergency training this time. Mutual cooperation training." Chi-Yu thought about it and said, "This is necessary. But concentrated training is fine. The location will be decided by me. Because whether it is you or the scum of the Vatican, you will not be able to gain my trust. If you are not afraid of being ambushed by us, come to Yanhuang. I will wait for you in the Yanhuang Republic." Yama hesitated for a moment and said, "We have no problem with the Greek side. We have no problem with the Greek side. As for the Vatican, I'll have to seek their opinion. No matter what the result is, in a week, my Zodiac Guardians and I will go to Yanhuang again. Wait for my call." It was not easy to hear Chi-Yu's tone soften. She hoped to keep this feeling, so she did not say much and hung up the phone. She went to discuss with the Pope, just as Yumo had said. After deciding to participate in this mission, Qiyu also informed the 4 big families of Yanhuang to recall the 12 Zodiac teams and prepare to receive special space training from the country. At the same time, Qiyu asked General Ji to keep it strictly confidential. He released Little Peng and redesigned the spacesuits for the members of the 12 Zodiac teams according to their sizes. The main design was the helmets and oxygen equipment. After all, the bodies of these golden-winged rocks were extremely strong. After a simple test, ordinary radiation in the universe could not cause any harm to them. Only oxygen was the key. Everyone began to get busy. In order to keep it secret, Qiyu and his Zodiac army were stationed at the headquarters of the Yellow Flame Soul and continued to undergo special space training for a full 5 days. General Ji was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. He did not expect Qiyu to have such a powerful force in his hands. Even an ordinary member of the Zodiac team could not compare to the results achieved by the Yellow Flame Soul members. Although they were not as versatile as the Yen Huang Soul and specialized in various professions, in terms of battle strength, they were definitely extremely strong. In a random gravity test, the most that an ordinary person could withstand was 10 times their own gravity. Under the effect of 10 times gravity, it was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to even move. And the combat experts of the Yellow Flame Soul could increase this number to about 30 times, which was basically their limit. However, when it was the turn of the Zodiac team, this number changed dramatically. As everyone knew, the physical ability of women was always weaker than that of men. But even the weakest female member of the Zodiac team could withstand gravity 79 times her own. More than 70% of the members of the Zodiac team could withstand gravity 100 times their own and still move normally. What did this mean? In other words, each of them had the ability to carry a weight of thousands of kilograms and still move normally. This did not take into account their various special abilities. For a moment, General Ji was very excited. In the face of such a crisis on Earth, it could be said that he had found a group of treasures. When it was time for the Zodiac Guardian God team to be tested, only one person was tested, and the test could not continue. As the weakest member, Guan Jing was naturally the first to be tested. About 5 minutes after she entered the gravity test room, all the equipment failed. In the end, there were only 3 question marks on the screen. One should know that this gravity test room was the most advanced in the entire Yanhuang Republic. It could produce more than 300 times the normal gravity. However, when the gravity test room was operating at full capacity, Guan Jing, the fatso, swayed around in the room as if nothing had happened. This situation immediately shocked everyone. The members of the Zodiac Pig team were suddenly very proud. After all, he was their captain. General Ji directly exempted the other Zodiac Guardian God team from the physical test because he was afraid that his heart could not withstand such a surprise. After all, he was getting old. In fact, Guan Jing's situation was also very special. As a black tortoise pig, his biggest characteristic was his super strong defense and resistance to all kinds of abnormal situations. In the case of the gravity test, the other Zodiac Guardian God team members, who were much stronger than him, might not be able to withstand gravity as strong as him. Of course, that was excluding those who were stronger than 8 clouds, as well as Hu Guang, the freak who could almost ignore gravity below 1,000 times. The entire space training was very easy. Compared to the training in the ancient behemoth era, such an easy training made the members of the Zodiac Guardian God team a little uncomfortable. With their tyrannical physical conditions, any training was just an attempt. When Qiyu and the others finished their space training, the news from the American spacecraft had also come back. Qiyu, come here for a moment. General Ji called Qiyu to a quiet room with a solemn expression. Uncle, what's wrong? Is there a problem? My companions are already preparing to go back. We will wait for orders in the Dragon Field courtyard. If there's anything you need, just let me know. Ji Zhongming sighed and said, "This time, I'm afraid you are destined to go to space." The composition of that asteroid has been sent back? Qi Yu immediately realized the problem. Chapter 269. Qi Yu was silent for a moment, then said, "We're ready. I don't want to talk about principles, but we'll do our best to protect our families. We'll have to rely on you for the preparation work. How many nuclear bombs does the Yanhuang Republic need to carry?" Ji Zhongming thought for a moment, then said, "About 1,200. They're all the most advanced and powerful nuclear bombs in our country. The United States has the most, about 3,000. The rest are from Russia and some other countries that have nuclear bombs." Qi Yu did a simple calculation. If 1,200 nuclear bombs were distributed evenly among each member of the Zodiac army, it would be about 9. He nodded and said, "No problem. Other than the intercontinental missiles, the Zodiac army will take care of the rest. As for the soul of Yanhuang, don't let them participate in this operation. If anything happens to us, the Yanhuang Republic will have to rely on them in the future." Qi Yu. General Ji looked at him and took a deep breath, barely able to calm his surging emotions. "You may have to carry more than 1,000 nuclear bombs. Can you handle such a large number?" Qi Yu said, "It shouldn't be a big problem. I can carry about 300 nuclear bombs, and I still have my companions. I think 1,000 is not a burden for us. If other countries are rich, we should be able to help them carry about 500 more. However, the equipment we agreed on must be complete. Otherwise, we can't guarantee the number of nuclear bombs we can carry." Ji Zhongming took a deep breath. Qi Yu said it very calmly, but he told himself that he could carry more than 300 nuclear bombs by himself. What did that mean? If such a person were to go to an enemy country, he could destroy that country in an instant. He looked at Qi Yu with a strange gaze. He nodded slowly and said, "Qi Yu, no matter what, you must come back alive. I'm not ordering you as a general, but as a father. Qi Yu, you risked your lives for the country this time. As long as you come back, then, you are the heroes of humanity." Qi Yu smiled and shook his head. "We don't want to be heroes. If we make it back alive, I only have one request." Ji Zhongming nodded and said, "Tell me." "As long as our country can do it, I believe the president will definitely not be stingy." Qi Yu smiled and said, "My request is that the country doesn't give us any rewards. At the same time, don't announce our identities to the public. This way, whether it is for us or for the country, both are the best endings." Ji Zhongming was stunned. "You don't want anything?" Qi Yu said, "Uncle, you have to understand that we are all from Yanhuang. What's more, we're not only doing this for the country but also for ourselves. Who doesn't have relatives? Taking risks to protect our family, friends, and loved ones is worth it for us. You've worked hard these past few days. You should take a rest. You don't have to worry about me. If there's any news, just ask Brother Jida to inform me." When Qi Yu brought the Zodiac squad and the Zodiac Guardian warriors back to the Dragonfield courtyard, he was surprised to find that there were already guests. It was none other than Yamu and her Zodiac Guardian warriors, as well as the Pope and the 4 cardinals. The group of 18 people made the Dragonfield courtyard much more lively. Qi Yu let the Zodiac squad temporarily stay in the courtyard of the Dragonfield courtyard. The tents had already been prepared. No one complained about such simple living conditions. They were absolutely obedient to Qi Yu's orders. Seeing Qi Yu again, Yamu couldn't help but be a little surprised. It was the first time she saw Qi Yu having so many subordinates, and judging from their energy auras, they were not ordinary people. Moreover, the aura they exuded was definitely very strong. Seeing the Zodiac squad, she couldn't help but think that if Qi Yu had brought all of them to the Battle of Mount Everest, then even if they had to pay a heavy price, the final outcome would have been decided. Qi Yu didn't pay attention to Yamu and the others. Instead, he personally arranged the Zodiac squad members with the 12 Zodiac warriors before walking back to the villa. Yamu and the Pope stood in front of the villa, waiting. It seemed that Pope Marty hadn't changed much. He still looked the same, but Yamu seemed to have lost some weight. Her face seemed a little pale, and it was unknown whether it was because she had not fully recovered from her previous injuries. Chiyu. Yamu called out softly. Chiyu nodded slowly and said, "Everyone, go back and rest first. I'll take care of the rest." The Zodiac warrior was very clear about the hatred between Chiyu, the Greek guardians, and the Vatican. At this time, he didn't want his companions to have any conflict with these people from the West. Now that the entire Earth was facing a crisis, they had to at least cooperate temporarily. Chiyu brought Yamu and the Pope into the hall. He didn't bother to make arrangements for the Zodiac guardians and the 4 cardinals. He directly sat down on the main seat and said calmly, "I didn't expect Your Excellency to come. Aren't you afraid that I'll take revenge for what happened last time?" Marty's face stiffened slightly. Frankly speaking, he was a little nervous when he saw Chiyu again. If it wasn't for Yamu's guarantee that they would be absolutely safe, the Pope really wouldn't have dared to come. As for the 4 cardinals, they didn't blame Chiyu for not even inviting him to take a seat. After all, they were once enemies, and the other party had defeated all 4 of them by himself. Such tyrannical strength not only made them feel fear, but it also won their respect. At the same time, it also won their respect. "Mr. Chi, this time we came with the purpose of cooperation. Let bygones be bygones. In this world, there are many things that are destined by the heavens. Since there's no turning back, please don't let hatred blind your eyes," the Pope said calmly to Chiyu. Chiyu sneered. "Don't let hatred blind my eyes? If I was really blinded by hatred, do you think you can still sit here and talk to me now?" "Mr. Chi, what do you mean by that?" Marty looked at Chiyu, his breathing becoming a little unstable. Chiyu said calmly, "I don't mean anything else. I just want to tell you that we can never be friends. This is a critical time, and I can temporarily forget what happened in the past. But when the crisis is over, my memory will return, and when we meet again, it will be a life-and-death struggle." His words were not only directed at the Pope. He wasn't only saying this to the Pope, but also to Yamu. Regardless of the situation of this cooperation, the hatred between the 2 parties was destined to be irreversible. The Pope looked at Yamu with a gloomy expression and said, "Miss Yamu, under such circumstances, do you think there's still a possibility for us to cooperate? It seems that our trip to Yanhuang this time was for naught." Yamu shook her head and said, "I don't think so. Didn't Mr. Chi already say that he's willing to temporarily let go of his hatred and cooperate with us? Even if it's temporary, it's still very beneficial for our current situation. It's also a must. Mr. Chi, we also brought the latest news from the United States this time. There are a total of 3 spaceships in charge of bringing us to space to carry out the mission, and all of them are large spaceships. They're also all the assets of the United States. Each spaceship will carry more than 2,000 nuclear bombs. After arriving at the designated location, they'll wait for the asteroid to arrive and strike. Right now, the biggest problem for us is the gravitational force produced by the asteroid. After all, nuclear bombs are very precious, and our main goal is to change the trajectory of the asteroid. Therefore, after launching the attack, we must accurately hit the target. Do you have any suggestions in this regard?" Chiyu glanced at Yamu and said, "You should know the specific speed of the asteroid. At that speed, its gravitational force will have a great impact on us. It can even cause the nuclear bomb to explode prematurely, which is the last thing we want to see. Therefore, I suggest that the candidates for this mission must have enough strength to get as close to the asteroid as possible before the artificial launch of the nuclear bomb. Moreover, they must ensure that their bodies won't be torn apart by the gravitational force produced by the asteroid. The closer they are to the asteroid, the more accurate the projectile will be." A hint of surprise appeared in Marty's eyes. "Mr. Chi, you're right. However, the closer we are to the asteroid, the less safe we are. Chi-Yu snorted disdainfully. If you're afraid of death, then don't participate in this mission. If you're not prepared to die, then participating in this mission will only be a burden to others. As soon as he said this, everyone nodded subconsciously, except for the Pope, whose face turned stern. Those who were determined to participate in this mission had basically ignored their own lives. Yama looked at Chi-Yu and said, "This time, the Vatican has decided to send experts from the Court of Judgment and 4 red-robed archbishops to participate in the battle. His Highness the Pope is also worried about them." Looking at the flickering light in Yama's eyes, Chi-Yu could not help but feel enlightened. It turned out that Marty was afraid of death, so he would not participate in this mission. At the same time, he did not want his subordinates to suffer too many losses. Contempt, intense contempt. How could such a person become the Pope? He really did not know how God chose him. "Sir Marty, as the head of the Vatican, are you not going to participate in this mission?" Chi-Yu asked, even though he already knew the answer. Without waiting for Marty to speak, one of the red-robed archbishops behind him took the initiative and said, "His Highness the Pope is a respected person, and the Vatican needs his leadership. Therefore, the 4 of us will be in charge of this mission." Chi-Yu said indifferently, "So, the Pope's life is a life, and others are not." Although Yamu had cheated his feelings before, when it came to the big picture, Yamu's decision still satisfied Chi-Yu. This was also one of the reasons why he agreed to cooperate this time. Yamu, as the inheritor of Goddess Athena, was willing to risk her life to participate in this mission, but Marty, as God's representative on Earth, did not dare to do so. Comparing them like this, Yamu was definitely stronger than Marty. Marty's expression was very ugly. He stood up and said, "If that's the case, then there's no need for us to cooperate anymore. Mr. Chi, don't think that you Guardians of the East are that powerful. If it wasn't for God giving you power, you're nothing. Let's go." "Your Highness the Pope." Yamu quickly stood up and stopped Marty. "Mr. Chi didn't mean that. He just felt that we should do our best in the face of this crisis. If a powerhouse like you can participate in this mission, it will definitely make the entire mission easier. This concerns the life and death of the Earth, so please be more tolerant." After hearing Yamu's words, Marty's expression became slightly better. There was a trace of stubbornness in his eyes, and he turned to Chi-Yu. "All right, Mr. Chi. Since you and Miss Yamu are willing to participate in this mission, then I, Marty, am more than 70 years old. What can I not bear to part with? I'll go with you. God will protect his believers." Chi-Yu knew that Marty had no choice but to make such a decision because he had ridiculed him in front of the many guardians of the East and West. After all, as the Pope, if he still did not agree, then his position among the guardians of the East and West would probably be with a smile. Chi-Yu said, "If that's the case, then we can now discuss our cooperation. Miss Yamu, I want to know how many nuclear bombs you're planning to carry in this mission, as well as the specific method of launching them." Yamu had obviously calculated it long ago. "Without hesitation," she said, "based on our preparations, each Constellation Guardian can carry about 6 to 8 nuclear bombs. Of course, there might be more. We'll have to see the specific weight of the nuclear bombs in space. After all, we can't affect the mission. Otherwise, we won't be able to launch them at close range like you said. In order to make it easier to carry nuclear bombs, we've already asked America to create special equipment for us. As for me, I can carry about 80 nuclear bombs. This is the special ability of Athena's shield, and it's also the limit." After hearing Yamu's words, the Pope could not help but show a hint of surprise. Obviously, he did not know that Yamu and the Greek guardians could carry so many nuclear bombs. Chi-Yu did a simple calculation and said, "That means that the maximum number of nuclear bombs you can carry should be about 200, right?" Yamu nodded and said, "More or less. I can guarantee 200. Your Holiness, what about you?" Marty said with a sullen face, This time, we will be sending the elites of the Holy See, as well as 3 of the 13 divine artifacts of the Holy See that can be carried. A total of 200 high-level deacons of the Inquisition will participate in this mission. Each person can carry up to 2 nuclear bombs. In addition to the 4 cardinals, 2 chief inquisitors of the Holy See, and myself, we can carry about 500 nuclear bombs in total. However, the abilities of the high-level deacons of the Inquisition naturally cannot be compared to you. Therefore, I cannot guarantee that they can launch the nuclear bombs at close range without being affected by the gravitational force of the moving asteroid. The more people there were, the more power there was. Chiyu couldn't help but think deeply. He smiled and said, "What about the remaining nuclear bombs of the West? As far as I know, the United States alone will provide more than 3,000 nuclear bombs. In addition to the several hundred intercontinental missiles that will be launched, there are also more than 2,000 nuclear bombs. The number that you have mentioned is far from enough. In this operation, apart from the 500 intercontinental missile launchers, there were also a lot of intercontinental missile launchers. There are still 6,500 nuclear bombs that we will need to carry." Yamu said, "This problem has already been solved. The United States will be sending their own mecha squad. This is the latest mecha that they have developed in recent years. Every mecha warrior has gone through special training. After putting on the mecha, they can walk in space at will. Furthermore, they can be equipped with 2 nuclear bombs. There are currently 1,000 of these mecha warriors. By the time we set off, this number should be able to reach about 1,500. In other words, they can carry about 3,000 nuclear bombs, plus the ones we and the Pope can carry. In addition to the nuclear bombs that we and the Pope can carry, there will be about 3,800 nuclear bombs. As for the remaining 2,700 nuclear bombs, the United States has promised to send people to carry 1,500 of them, including the number from the United States and some countries in the East. As for the last 1,200 pieces, they were currently gathering experts from all over the world. I think it's still possible to find experts from the billions of people in the world within 30 days. And there's still you guys. With your strength, you should be able to carry quite a lot of them." Chiyu forced a smile and said, "Our country is talking about 1,500. In fact, it is what we carry. Our country doesn't have the technological prowess of the United States, so we can only take full responsibility for this operation." Yamu and the Pope exclaimed at the same time. Malti said in disbelief, "What did you say? With just you and your Zodiac guardian god warriors, do you think you can carry more than 1,500 nuclear bombs?" Chiyu said indifferently, "What's wrong with that? Don't you see my companions outside?" The number of people participating in this operation totals to nearly 140. Apart from me, each of them could carry an average of more than 8 nuclear bombs. As for the remaining 300 or so, I will carry them myself. Marty wanted to curse. "Do you think you're a spaceship? A single person carrying 300 nuclear bombs? I don't believe it." Chiyu smiled calmly and said, "I never lie. This is different from you guys. If I say it, I will definitely be able to do it. Whether you believe it or not, you will naturally find out when the time comes." Yama's expression changed slightly and said, "If that's the case, then how are we going to make up for the last 1,200 nuclear bombs? We can't reduce the number of 7,000 nuclear bombs we're calculating right now. Otherwise, we might not be able to deviate the asteroid from its orbit." Chiyu thought about it and said, "This problem isn't that difficult to solve. There are still some experts in this world." Marty seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed greatly. "You can't be talking about the Covenant of Darkness, right?" Chiyu said indifferently. "The Covenant of Darkness has been able to fight against the Church for so many years. Don't you admit that they are experts that can contend against you guys?" "No, I definitely won't agree," Marty said resolutely. "Even if the people of the Covenant of Darkness have enough strength, Who can guarantee that they will sincerely help us? If they suddenly betray us during the operation, it will be a disaster for the entire Earth. In that case, it would be a disaster for the entire Earth. We absolutely cannot pin our hopes on those dark creatures. I don't agree. Yamu nodded and said, I agree with His Highness the Pope's opinion on this point. After all, the Covenant of Darkness has been living in the underworld for a long time, and their way of thinking is completely different from ours. Once a problem occurs, it will be irreparable. Chi-Yu said indifferently, however, don't forget that the people of the Covenant of Darkness also live on Earth. Once Earth is destroyed, they will be destroyed as well. Even if hell exists in another plane, I think it will also be greatly affected, just like the god that you worship, Your Majesty Marty. If it wasn't for the fact that that plane will be affected as well, I'm afraid you wouldn't be so enthusiastic about it. Yamu was silent, but Marty said angrily, No matter what you say, I will never agree to let the people of the Covenant of Darkness join this operation. If something goes wrong, can you bear the responsibility? Chi-Yu shook his head and said, To be honest, I can't bear the responsibility. After all, this concerns the safety of the entire Earth. However, Your Highness Marty, let me ask you this. If we can't gather enough people to carry the remaining 1,200 nuclear bombs, can the asteroid not be blown out of its orbit? Then, what difference does the final outcome make? Since we have no other choice, why don't we try to trust our enemies? Just like how I can choose to trust you guys again. You actually compare us to those creatures of darkness? Marty pointed at Chi-Yu, the energy aura emitted from his body fluctuating unstably. Chi-Yu snorted. You scared me. In my eyes, you are no different from them. In fact, I am more inclined to trust them, because at least they are not my absolute enemies, and they did not bring me any real harm. However, my brother Klinsman really died in the hands of you guys, who look sanctimonious on the surface, but are actually full of thieves and prostitutes. This time, it was not only the Pope who was angry. The four cardinals' expressions changed at the same time, and their gazes towards Chi-Yu suddenly became sharp. Holy energy was released, and they could attack at any time. Chi-Yu was still sitting leisurely in his seat, not affected by the anger of these people. Even if the Pope and the four cardinals wanted to destroy him in an instant, it would be impossible. A sharp aura emitted from his body, and he looked at these people in front of him calmly. He was not afraid, and there was even a hint of provocation in his gaze. All right. Can't all of you calm down? Yamu stood up and walked in between the two sides, separating their energy auras from each other. What Chi-Yu said is not without reason. After all, we are facing a disaster for the entire Earth. What we need now is to unite the forces of the left and right. Malty said anxiously, But, Miss Yamu, you have to understand. Those creatures of darkness cannot be trusted. I don't believe that it will be so difficult to find 1,200 strong people from all over the world. Chi-Yu indifferently replied, Perhaps it is possible to gather so many people. However, people from all over the world will not be able to gather so many people. Do you understand? When the whole team is mobilized, even if one person is afraid or makes a mistake, it will affect the whole situation. And although the Dark Parliament exists in the Dark World, at least they are a whole like you guys. When the whole team is mobilized, there will not be any big problems. You can't deny that, can you? It is necessary to gather strong people. After all, in this operation, the more nuclear bombs we bring, the better. This way we will be more confident, and those who join the Dark Parliament will undoubtedly be of great help to us, no matter what you think. For the sake of Earth, to protect our friends and family in Yanhuang, I will choose to make a trip to the Dark Parliament and fight for their cooperation. As for what they will do when the time comes, we can only leave it up to fate. But I believe that as long as I am around, even if they cannot help us, it is unlikely that they will be able to cause a destructive effect. When he said this, Chi-Yu was full of confidence. The aura he exuded made Malty unable to refute him. Yamu nodded and said, "All right then, I can go with you to the Dark Parliament. As for His Highness the Pope, there is no need. After all, you are enemies." Chiyu said calmly, "There is no need. I will go alone." Yamu looked deeply at Chiyu and said, "But I feel that now is not the time to look for the Dark Parliament. If possible, I think it is better not to rely on the strength of the Dark Parliament. Why don't we wait a little longer? If we can gather enough strong people from all over the world, then we will not need the strength of the Dark Parliament. On the contrary, it will not be too late for us to look for them about 10 days before the asteroid arrives." This was a very reasonable request, and was immediately approved by the Pope. Chiyu did not insist on anything. After all, he had some reservations about joining forces with the Dark Parliament. "Chiyu, now we should discuss how to coordinate our training, right?" Yamu raised the next question. Chiyu raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh? Coordinate our training? Why don't you tell me what you want to do?" He looked coldly at Yamu and thought to himself, "Are you still thinking of using me? Then you are underestimating me, Chiyu." Yamu lowered her head and thought for a while before saying, "Chiyu, back then I trained with the help of your aura for a period of time. That was also the period when I improved the fastest. The aura of the origin of nature emanating from your body is very helpful to me and any other cultivator. I was wondering if you could train with all of us. We don't need to release too much, just maintain a normal training state. That would be very beneficial to us." Source of nature. So you are still thinking about my source of nature. No wonder you came to Yen Huang before the mission began. However, I really want to know what method you are going to use to deceive me this time. Do you think you will have the same opportunity as before?" Chiyu said unceremoniously. Yamu's aura paused for a moment and she said indifferently, "Chiyu, even if I had such thoughts, you would not be able to give me such an opportunity with your current strength. You should understand that the increase in our strength is for the upcoming mission. Can you put aside your prejudices? Even if it is for the safety of Earth, I cannot possibly lie to you at this time." "Yes, I can guarantee that as well," the Pope said solemnly. Looking at the Pope, Yuyun could not help but sneer. "Oh? His Highness the Pope's guarantee. That is still very useful. It will definitely sound good when used as an irony." If not for the Pope's regret at the last minute, it would have been impossible for Yamu to obtain Chi-Yu's strength. Yuyun did not have a good impression of the Pope and subconsciously stood on Chi-Yu's side. Chi-Yu glanced at Yuyun. Although his hatred for her was not as strong as Yamu's, without her as a catalyst, so many things would not have happened. Yuyun could be said to be the cause of everything. Towards this pair of sisters, Chi-Yu would definitely politely decline. Training together is fine. However, if you are only benefiting from me, then forget it. Since it is a cooperation, then both sides should show their sincerity. I have the source of nature, but what do you have? At least it has to be beneficial to all my Zodiac members. Only then will I consider letting you borrow the aura of the source of nature. Chi-Yu had already matured a long time ago. At this time, it was obviously the best choice to discuss the conditions. Moreover, this was a situation where everyone would benefit from it. Facing the invaders from hell that could appear at any time, whether it was Yamu's Greek guardian or the Vatican, they had to quickly increase their strength in order to better deal with them. Therefore, he was not afraid that Yamu and the Pope would not show their sincerity. Chapter 270. Chi-Yu turned his gaze to the Pope and asked, "What about you? Your Holiness the Pope, I heard you say just now that the Church has 13 divine weapons. There must be one among them that can assist in training, right?" The Pope hesitated for a moment. Just as Chi-Yu had guessed, he was eager to increase his own strength. Ever since Yamu became the true successor of Athena and completely inherited the power of God, she had greatly surpassed him. Before they came here, Yamu had told the Pope about how she and Chi-Yu had fought to a draw, which made him feel even more powerless. When Yamu absorbed Chi-Yu's provenance of nature and gained the approval of Athena's artifact, Marty had witnessed it with his own eyes. The provenance of nature's provenance's positive energy was also very important to him. Malty gritted his teeth and said, "My holy light has a similar effect to Miss Yamu's Athena's light. At the same time, the Church has a divine weapon called God's Call, which can increase the density of energy molecules by 30%. It should have a certain effect on cultivation. I am willing to take it out and use it in everyone's cultivation." At this point, he was already feeling a little regretful. If he had known that he would have to train in this way, he would have brought more experts from the Vatican with him. He did not bring the Archcardinal, who could escape with him at any time to guard against Chi Yu and the Guardian of the East. After listening to the Pope's words, Chi Yu smiled and nodded. "Since the two of you are so sincere, then, I think you don't need to rest any longer. Let's start right away." To Chi Yu, there was no need for any of you to rest. The biggest attraction was the God's Call, which could increase the speed of energy particles condensation by 30%. Such a treasure would definitely be very useful for cultivation. The light of Athena and the light of holiness would be of great help to the few Zodiac Guardian warriors who were adept at fire elemental energy. Together with the 30 members of the Su family who were also adept at fire elemental energy, it was not a loss. Although he did not fully trust Yamu and the Pope, Chi Yu understood that they would not play any tricks at this time. Taking a step back, even if they wanted to do something, this was the capital of the Yanhuang Republic. There were 100 members of the Zodiac squad and his 12 Zodiac guardian gods outside. It was not easy to plot against him. Training took place in the courtyard of the Dragon Field courtyard. In order to avoid outsiders, Ryue deliberately sent out all the servants in the courtyard, leaving only Uncle Zhou to buy the food that everyone needed. After a brief discussion, the training finally began. He sat on the innermost seat. It was Chi Yu, the Pope, and Yamu. The three of them sat together in a triangle, with their seats as the center. In the outer circle were the 4 red-robed archbishops, the 12 Zodiac guardian warriors, and the 12 Zodiac guardian gods. In the outer circle were the 30 members of the Zodiac squad, Shang Bing, Snow Girl, and the Plant Soul. Then there were the other members of the Zodiac squad. The training was no longer about actual combat experience, but about the improvement of energy. As for how much energy could be improved in 20 days, even Chi Yu and the other two did not know. The training finally began. Chi Yu was the first to close his eyes and concentrate on the thundercloud force in his body. He began to cultivate his wind thundercloud force. Both the water and fire thundercloud force had been improved to the 8-cloud realm. After the battle with Yama last time, although he was seriously injured, in the actual combat, his source of nature body further exploded its potential, causing his energy to improve to a certain extent. As a result, Chi Yu's wind and lightning powers, which had yet to reach the 8-cloud realm, had improved. Chi Yu urgently needed to improve these 2 thundercloud force to the 8-cloud realm. He was very clear that if his energy was improved to the 8-cloud realm, then Yama would no longer be a match for him. From the 7-cloud to the 8-cloud, his energy would directly double. According to his previous experience, after improving to the 8-cloud realm, he might be able to use the 4th of the 8 laws of Xianyuan. At that time, his strength would definitely reach a higher realm. In the world, perhaps no one would be able to compete with him. Even if Lucifer came again, it would probably be extremely difficult for him to deal with his 8-cloud strength. 4 top human powerhouses like Chi Yu, Yamu, and the Pope, the improvement of their strength would have a doubling effect. It was not the doubling of energy, but the artifact. The stronger the energy, the greater the amplification effect of the artifact. Therefore, when they broke through a bottleneck, coupled with a breakthrough in the use of the artifact, they would definitely be able to make their strength stronger. This was the most important point for Chi Yu. After all, only the artifact of the East could be called a real artifact. It was the representative of the Western world. The gentle aura of nature energy floated out. As Chi-Yu stabilized his own strength, he released the aura of nature energy. In this aspect, he would not take advantage of Yamu and the Pope. After all, they were masters of the same level. If the aura he released was more inclined to the side of the Zodiac Guardian warriors, then Yamu and the Pope would definitely be able to feel it. There was no need to mention the word sincerity. Since the situation in front of him was mutually beneficial, Chi-Yu was not afraid that the two of them would get any real benefits from him. After all, the source of nature could only make them absorb energy a little faster. Without the guidance of Chi-Yu's mental strength, it would not be able to produce the effect of body transformation. When Yamu and the Pope felt the energy aura released from Chi-Yu, their expressions suddenly became gentle, and they subconsciously revealed a look of comfort. Under the effect of the gentle energy aura from the source of nature, they could clearly feel that their energy waves had become abnormally calm. There was no restlessness, and they did not need to divide their energy to guard their hearts. They could use all their energy on cultivation. At this moment, Pope Marty had also gained a deeper understanding of the benefits of the origin of nature. He could not help but inwardly exclaim in admiration towards Chi-Yu. Yamu's Athena's staff was inserted into the soil beside her. Her right hand was still holding the staff that was filled with holy aura. A circle of golden light floated out and covered the entire dragon field courtyard at a low altitude. Immediately, everyone present felt a warm energy sweep through their bodies. Even those who didn't cultivate light or fire energy could feel the wonderful feeling of calmness and unblocking their meridians from the pure divine light. The light of Athena shone on everyone, bringing great benefits to everyone. The third to move was the Pope. A faint white halo shone above his head. It was his crown. When the training began, the Pope's crown shone. When the training began, the Pope put it on his head. The milky white gem in the center of the crown was the source of the white light. As the faint light floated, the entire dragon field courtyard suddenly changed. All the colors seemed to become much brighter than before, and the energy waves also became more intense. The energy molecules of various attributes, except for darkness, greatly increased the speed of condensation. It made the warriors of the Zodiac army feel as if they had returned to the era of the ancient beasts. It turned out that the crown was the call of the Earth Emperor that the Pope had mentioned. At the same time, the Pope's staff also lit up, and a similar golden light shone out. It assisted Athena's light, making the cold winter even warmer. The first to feel surprised was the plant soul. She was very familiar with the aura of the source of nature that Chi-Yu's body emitted. It was also very beneficial to her training, so she did not pay too much attention to it. However, when Yamu's Athena's light was emitted, the plant soul felt completely different. The soft golden light shone on her body, and she immediately felt extremely comfortable. Suddenly, she felt extremely comfortable. The plant elemental energy in her body was like a new plant that was growing and sprouting. She didn't even need to deliberately cultivate, and it would automatically improve. Moreover, the speed of improvement was even more obvious than when she concentrated on cultivating. Then, the milky white light on the Pope's head greatly increased the energy aura of the entire Dragonfield courtyard. The 30% auxiliary effect further increased the speed of the plant soul's training. When the Pope's holy light shone on her body again, the plant soul clearly felt the speed of the increase in the energy in her body. It felt like she was sitting on a rocket. At first, the plant soul did not understand why this was happening, but she quickly understood. There were two most important things for plant. One was water, which was the source of life. Plant attribute energy, which was full of vitality, was the closest to the water element. The other was light. With water, plants needed sunlight to photosynthesize in order to grow and develop. At this time, whether it was Athena's light or the holy light, the soft light brought by the plant soul had a great auxiliary effect on her plant attribute energy. Under the guidance of the origin of nature, her own energy had greatly increased. Naturally, Chi-Yu felt what the plant soul could feel. Yamu's Athena's light was extremely powerful when used as an attack, but now that it was used as an auxiliary, it was extremely beneficial to him. After all, the plant soul only cultivated plant attribute energy, but Chi-Yu himself was the origin of nature. Under the illumination of the two lights that were full of energy aura and light elements, the huge amount of natural energy suddenly increased. Even when he was in the era of the ancient beasts, Chi-Yu had not felt this way. The increase in the origin of nature caused the aura of the origin of nature that his body emitted to naturally become stronger, and the benefits to the people who were training around him had increased imperceptibly. The young people of the Shun family in the capital city had benefited no less than the people of the Su family. With Chi-Yu's origin of nature aura as a guide, their speed of improvement was even faster. Yamu had already entered the state of training. While working hard to cultivate her own energy, she sighed to herself. Chi-Yu, I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts. If I'm not wrong, whether it is my Athena's light or the Pope's holy light, they are both very beneficial to your origin of nature. I've let you down in the past. I hope I can give you some compensation now. Although you won't mind, this will at least make me feel better. All of this was arranged in advance by Yamu. Of course, she knew that her Athena's light would not have much effect on Chi-Yu's energy cultivation. However, the main purpose of her bringing the Pope to train together was not to improve her and the Pope's strength, but for Chi-Yu. She no longer had any illusions about Chi-Yu and did not care whether she would die in the hands of Chi-Yu in the future. As long as she could help him a little, she would feel much better. This was something that Chi-Yu did not know. Chi-Yu's cultivation speed continued to rise. Under the effect of the origin source of nature's energy, Chi-Yu had almost completely absorbed the wind element summoned by the call of God into his body. His wind and lightning cloud force were already quite close to the 8 clouds level, and with the help of the origin of nature that was constantly strengthening, the rate of improvement had become much faster. Time passed day by day. Apart from eating and solving physiological problems, everyone spent all their time on cultivation. On the 10th day of cultivation, Chi-Yu finally made a breakthrough. With the help of the energy of the origin of nature, his wind thundercloud force, which was the fire and water thundercloud force, had completely advanced to the level of 8 clouds, causing the energy in his body to increase by a large margin. The current Chi-Yu was extremely good at concealing his strength. Thus, other than himself, no one else knew that the 4 auspicious clouds Ink Qilin had made a huge breakthrough. Faint divine light flickered. Pope Marty was also very satisfied. Chi-Yu's origin of nature's aura was increasing by leaps and bounds every day, greatly benefiting his divine energy in training. Of course, he did not know that the increase in the energy of the origin of nature was closely related to his call of God and holy light. It was equivalent to him replenishing his own energy, but the situation was different. The busiest person these days was Uncle Zhou. Every day, he had to take care of logistics and deliver the news that Jida brought to Chi-Yu. Uncle Zhou understood that it was classified as a national secret. Every time Jida came, he would write a note to Uncle Zhou, which would then be placed in front of Chi-Yu by Uncle Zhou. When he woke up to a certain stage of cultivation, he would read it. Jida was very envious that these people could gather together to cultivate. However, as one of the members of the Yellow Flame Soul sect, he was now facing a worldwide crisis. Every member of the Yellow Flame Soul sect had become extremely busy, and he did not have much time to stay here. Hence, he was only responsible for delivering all kinds of news from above. As the date of the asteroid hitting Earth approached, the information from various aspects became more and more detailed. On the side of the United States, the spacecraft was already ready to set off. The final adjustment of the 500 intercontinental missiles in the world was also nearing completion, and they were all loaded with the most advanced nuclear bombs. The United States Secret Mecha Squad was also completely exposed to the world this time, which further demonstrated the strength of the country. Frankly speaking, the United States, as the strongest country in the world, had put in the most effort to deal with this crisis. At the same time, Chi Yu had also received news that the spacesuits they had ordered had been completed. For this operation, the Yenhuang Republic had used all of its national power on various auxiliary aspects. The nuclear bombs had already been prepared. Now they only needed some auxiliary work and coordination with the United States to launch the intercontinental missiles. In 20 days, the asteroid would enter the firing range. Now, everyone who knew about this was filled with anxiety. As the saying went, a storm was brewing. Although all countries had tried their best to block the news, there were still some rumors that had leaked out. The governments of all countries had unanimously denied it, suppressing the initial panic. However, even the United States was not sure how long this rumor would last. Another 10 days passed. It was time for Chi Yu and Yamu to meet. Ever since the Thundercloud Force had been upgraded to the 8-cloud level, Chi Yu had put all of his energy into the Thundercloud Force. As the last type of Thundercloud Force to upgrade to the 8-cloud level, making the final breakthrough was also the most difficult. Chi Yu did not dare to cultivate too impatiently, for fear that uncertainties would cause him to go berserk. If that happened, the gains would not make up for the losses. As he took a deep breath, the sky gradually darkened. Chi Yu temporarily stopped cultivating because he suddenly sensed a familiar aura approaching. It was none other than Master Zagru. It was the Zodiac guardian god's heavenly guide, Master Zagru. Chi Yu would never hide it from others, but he would never hide it from Zagru. He had been waiting for Zagru to arrive for many days. He did not expect that Zagru would only arrive now. The others were still quietly cultivating. Only Yamu and the Pope woke up when they could not sense the natural aura released by Chi Yu. They were strong enough to control their meditation time at will. Master Zagru walked in, looking travel-worn. He was still alone. When he saw Chi Yu, he could not help but walk a few steps towards Chi Yu. Zagru's expression was very ugly. Although he was about the same age as Chi Yu, he looked a little old. Master, what happened to you? Chi Yu was very clear about Zagru's cultivation. For him to become like this, it must be because of a large amount of mental energy. Zagru glanced at Yamu and the Pope. He nodded to them and said, "Come, let's talk inside. Don't disturb the others." The 4 of them entered the villa. Zagru did not even have time to sit down before he said, "The situation now is very bad. You have to be mentally prepared." His sudden words stunned the 3 of them. The Pope was slightly better. He felt a trace of religious aura from Zagru. However, as he was not familiar with Zagru, he did not know the position of this young monk in front of him among the Eastern Guardians. However, Yamu and Chi Yu were very familiar with Zagru, especially Chi Yu. He knew that Zagru must have a reason for saying this. Zagru slightly panted a few times before he said, "After receiving your call, I forcefully opened the Buddha's eye and used 5 years of my lifespan as a price to peep into the secrets of heaven. I saw things that I should not have seen. Therefore, you must be fully prepared." Chi Yu's heart tightened. He said, "Master, what did you see?" Zagru said in a low voice, "I saw a failure at the last step. Although I do not know how you arranged it, the joint operation of the world's countries will inevitably fail at the last step." Yamu eagerly asked, "Then what should we do now? Master, please give us some advice." At this moment, the Pope saw that Chi Yu and Yamu were very respectful to this monk, and only then did he feel that this young monk was not ordinary. Zagru said in a low voice, "I also do not know what to do. I only want to tell you that when you really start the operation, you must have a backup plan. You cannot completely rely on the power of the country. Otherwise, the final outcome will be extremely tragic. This is all I can see. Fortunately, the final outcome does not seem to be a tragedy. And the key to the outcome, I only saw a golden light. Based on the current situation, that golden light must belong to one of you. As for who specifically, I also do not know. Chi-Yu and the other two looked at each other in dismay. For a moment they could not say anything. From a scientific point of view, 7,000 nuclear bombs were already completely enough to complete the mission. Could it be that the Master's prediction was more accurate than science? One could say that the Master was alarmist, but his previous predictions had not been wrong. The crisis would come one after another, and this first crisis was already a little too much for Chi-Yu to handle. The Pope frowned and said, "I do not quite understand what you mean by preparation. Golden light, are you referring to the holy light of our holy see? But even if we invite the 6 archangels to descend, I do not think it will have any impact on the situation. After all, how can human strength compare to the powerful nuclear weapons? The story of destroying a planet with a stomp of one's foot would only appear in novels." Zagru smiled indifferently and said, "This I do not know. The only thing you can do now is to continue to increase your strength. And do your best to unite with the strong from all sides. Prepare more nuclear weapons, and when intercepting the asteroid, go all out. Cooperate with each other perfectly, and do not have the slightest bit of selfishness. Only in this situation. Only then will you have a chance." Chi-Yu and Yamu nodded at the same time. Only Pope Malti frowned, as if thinking about something. Zagru looked very tired. He walked to the sofa and sat down, and said to Chi-Yu, "Chi-Yu, I want to speak to you alone." Chi-Yu looked at the Pope and Yamu, and the two tactfully walked out. A layer of faint white light isolated the air, so that the conversation between the two would not be leaked. In order to be safe within the thundercloud force, Chi-Yu added a layer of his own spiritual energy, so that even the Pope and Yamu would not be able to hear the conversation between him and Zagru. "Master, what do you want to say to me?" Chi-Yu asked. Zaglu tiredly closed his eyes and said, "Chi-Yu, I am unable to help you in terms of strength this time. However, you must remember that I am unable to help you in terms of strength. When the crisis came, you have to have absolute confidence in yourself. I didn't say it in front of them, but I feel that the root of this crisis lies with us, the Eastern Guardian. As the King of the Zodiac, the most outstanding of the Guardians of the East, you are obviously duty-bound. Chi-Yu, do you understand what I mean?" Chi-Yu was shocked and said, "Grandmaster, are you going to tell me that in the end, it is very likely that we will have to rely on manpower to solve the problem?" Zagru reopened his eyes and looked deeply into Chi-Yu's eyes. "I'm glad that you understand. You can only rely on yourself for the specifics. I can only help you see some of it, but I don't know how to actually do it. You'll have to figure out what changes will occur. Do you understand?" Chi-Yu nodded and said, "I understand. Grandmaster, don't worry. No matter what, I will do my best." Zagru smiled and said, "Of course, I have confidence in you. Chi-Yu, you are about to reach the level of 8 clouds, aren't you? The real ink Kirin of 8 clouds." Chi-Yu looked at Zagru in surprise and said, "Grandmaster, you even know this? Should I call you half-immortal Jia in the future?" Zagru laughed and scolded, "What half-immortal? I am a Buddhist. Don't forget, as the guardian of the Zodiac, I can be said to be the person most familiar with you. Even without close contact, when you change, I can feel it immediately. Chi-Yu, am I right? Has your strength broken through again?" Chi-Yu nodded and said, "That's right, I am already close to the level of 8 clouds. Now only the thundercloud force is left. However, if I work hard, I should be able to complete it before the start of this mission." Zagru said, "That's right. This time, at the cost of 5 years of my lifespan, I not only obtained the prediction of this crisis, but also some revelations about you. I didn't want to tell you at first, but after careful consideration, I feel that it's better to let you know first, so that you don't have to waste more time." Chi-Yu was a little puzzled and said, "Grandmaster, what do you mean? Can you explain it a little more clearly?" Zagru said, "As the unprecedented 4 auspicious clouds ink Kirin, you are different from the previous king of Kirin. Ink Kirin is already the king of Kirin clan, and the appearance of Ink Kirin with many clouds is a rare anomaly. However, you have become the Ink Kirin with many clouds, which means that you are no longer in the category of ordinary Kirin. I'm sure you've sensed it yourself. With your current strength, you're almost on par with an ordinary 9-cloud Qilin. You might even be able to take on a 9-cloud Ink Qilin. When you truly advance to the level of 8 clouds, then your overall strength will soar again. At that time, there will be no 9-cloud Kirin in history who can compare to you. 4 auspicious clouds. Although it can't be compared to the 4 Ink Kirin, it's not much worse. With such great strength, you will become the envy of the heavens. After hearing Qi Yu's words, Qi Yu thought about it and said, "Indeed, my current strength can no longer be measured by the original Kirin level. I have felt the changes in my strength before. Back then, Brother Xianyuan's soul told me that even if I reached the level of 9 clouds, I could only use the third technique of Xuanyuan's 8 laws at most. However, when I reach the level of 7 clouds, I can already use the power of the third technique. When my strength reaches the higher level of 8 clouds, I am very confident that I can use the 4th or even the 5th sword of Xuanyuan's 8 swords. Although this situation is related to the origin of nature and the energy that when Ting fused with me, it also shows that the 4 auspicious clouds Ink Kirin is different from ordinary Kirin." Zagru nodded and said, "That's right. From the revelation I got from opening my heavenly eye, you, who have reached the level of 8 clouds, are already comparable to a true god. This kind of existence is definitely not something the heavens are willing to recognize. In the past, the water god and the fire god placed a seal on our world. The power of this seal will limit the people of our world to a certain level. Anyone who reaches the peak of this level will be obstructed by the power of the seal, and will never be able to take another step forward. This is also why it is very difficult for the Western gods to come to our world. Once they appear, they will immediately be suppressed by the seal. Only under special circumstances can they avoid the effect of the seal." Qi Yu was startled and said, "Great Master, you mean to say that after I reach the 8-cloud level, I will have reached this limit and will no longer be able to increase it?" Zagru nodded and said, "That's right, it is like that. My heavenly eye saw that when your energy reaches the level of 8 clouds, you will encounter the biggest bottleneck, and it will be almost impossible to improve further. If you want to truly reach the level of 9 clouds and reach the peak of your power, then you will have to put in a lot of effort. Not only will the 4 types of thundercloud force have to be improved separately, but at the same time, the 4 types of thundercloud force will not be improved in our world." "Ah? Not in our world? I don't understand what you mean." Qi Yu was full of disappointment. Recently, he had been thinking about what kind of innate domain of Kirin he would get after reaching the level of 9 cloud. Also, to what extent could the power of the Kongtong seal and the Xianyuan sword reach? The undying domain of the Kongtong seal was very useful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. In order to reserve more energy for battle, he could only use the undying domain once when facing a true powerhouse. He didn't dare to use it again, and it could only be used for a moment. Chapter 271. Zagru said, "Looking at the current situation, you, the Pope, and Yamu have all reached a level close to that limit, but there is still a gap. This is also the last space for you to improve. And when you reach the level of 8 clouds, this space for improvement will end. At that time, you will have 2 choices. One is to find a place that can improve your strength in order to pursue greater power. As for the specific place that can raise your power to a higher level, don't ask me, because I don't know. Even if I sacrifice my life to help you find this secret, you may not be able to find that place. And the other choice is to stop cultivating, and rely on the power that has reached the peak of this world. Temper yourself as much as possible, think of a way to improve your combat skills, and maximize the power you have." Qi Yu lightly shook his head and said, "Grandmaster, you have done enough for us, Don't use your life as the price to see those things that shouldn't be seen. Whatever changes will happen to this world, let us deal with it. As for the end, we can only leave it to fate. As for the problem of increasing power, I have my own method, maybe it will succeed. Zagru looked at Chi Yu's face that was gradually turning green, and smiled, and said, "It's good that you can think it through. After all, when you reach the level of 8 clouds, you are already standing at the peak of this world. Do you still remember the first time we met? At that time, I really didn't think that you would become so powerful in the future, becoming the king of the Zodiac. And also the strongest king of the Zodiac in history." Thinking back to the scene at that time, Chi Yu's eyes couldn't help but show a trace of gratitude. Although he had a lot of burdens on his shoulders now, compared to that time, he would rather not live a mediocre life like this. Not to mention other things, to be able to have so many friends, find his family, and obtain the love of his lovers. This was something that Chi Yu didn't even dare to think about before. Yes, at that time I was just a ruffian. Because I beat up Little E, that guy was afraid of revenge, so I secretly ran to Tibet to avoid trouble. Who would have thought that I would meet you? It changed my whole life. Zagru said, "Everything has already been decided. Possessing Kiran's bloodline has already determined that you will be extraordinary. Even without my appearance, you will still become the king of Kiran. Chi Yu, you have already done very well. You will face a great test in the coming calamities. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just do your best." Chi Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Don't worry, I won't have much of a burden. In fact, I only have one goal. As long as I can protect my family and friends, I will be satisfied. As for other things, I don't think too much about it. Frankly speaking, if it wasn't for the fact that this asteroid impact will destroy the entire world, do you think I would be willing to go to outer space to take the risk?" Zagru laughed and said, "You don't always speak the truth. It won't be good if others hear it." Although he said so, in his heart, he really liked Chi Yu's straightforwardness. There was no awe-inspiring righteousness, nor would he brag about serving the country and the people. However, what he did was truly chivalrous. Chi Yu's eyes flashed and he said, "Master, I suddenly thought of a problem. You just said that there is a seal in our world, and this seal can limit the upper limit of the ability that humans can achieve in the entire world. If this is the case, then will the devil king of hell, Satan, be unable to come to our world? However, the last time I met the princess of hell, she seemed to be very confident that her father could come to our world. With Satan's strength, it can't be that he can't surpass the limit of that seal, right?" Zagru's eyes revealed a trace of contemplation. After a while, he said, "As the great devil king, Satan's strength is already comparable to the highest god in the Western world. His strength must have exceeded the limit of that seal. As for why it is possible for him to come to the human world, there is only one possibility. That is, under special circumstances, the seal has failed, allowing him to come to the human world without affecting his strength. As for how long this situation can last, and what will happen after he comes to our world, I don't know. This may also be one of the crises that the world is facing. Of course, this should be a crisis that belongs to the Western world." Chi Yu said, "However, if Satan needs special conditions to come to the human world, then what about the Bull Demon King? Last time, I saw him easily destroy the 8-winged fallen angel Lucifer with my own eyes. According to legend, Lucifer's strength in hell is second only to Satan. The Bull Demon King was able to destroy him so easily, which proves that the Bull Demon King's strength is at least not below that of Satan. In this case, isn't he also an existence that surpasses the existence of a god?" Zagru was stunned by Chi Yu's question. Indeed, according to Chi Yu's description, the Bull Demon King definitely had strength that surpassed that of an ordinary god. Otherwise, he would not have caused such a huge change during the ancient beasts era, and the mythological beasts were completely suppressed by the ferocious beasts for tens of thousands of years. However, the seal of the two great gods of water and fire should indeed exist. But why did it not work on the Bull Demon King? Seeing that Zagru was silent, Chiyu smiled slightly and said, Master, you don't have to worry anymore, right? So, nothing is absolute. There will always be a way to break through the bottleneck of my 8-winged level. Zagru laughed bitterly and said, I hope so. Chiyu, I'm a little tired. Chiyu said, Then go and rest. I understand what you said just now. Unite all the forces that can be united. The overall strength of the Allied forces for this mission will be greatly increased. This way we will be more confident in facing everything. I will pass on this matter to the upper echelons of Yan Huang. I will make a trip to Germany immediately. Who knows, we might really have to make use of the power of the Dark Parliament this time. Zagru looked deeply at Chiyu and said, You must be careful. The danger brought by the asteroid this time is undoubtedly huge. However, in my prediction of the secrets of heaven, I have a feeling that. Zagru had just said this when the sky outside suddenly darkened without warning. The sky outside suddenly darkened without any warning. Then, a clap of thunder rang out, causing the entire Dragon Realm courtyard to tremble. Chiyu shot in front of Zagru and covered his mouth. He laughed bitterly and said, Master, the secrets of heaven cannot be revealed. Zagru was stunned for a moment. He looked at Chiyu and could not help but sigh. He said, In that case, everything will depend on your own strength. Aren't you going to Germany? Then go early and come back early. I will try my best to help you here. Chiyu sent Zagru to a guest room to rest. He then walked out of the villa. Speaking of which, it was strange. The sky that had suddenly darkened just now was now clear again. This made Chiyu very depressed. Damned heavens! Can't you let Master Zagru give me more instructions? How stingy! Forget it. It seemed that he could only rely on his own strength this time. Yamu and the Pope were waiting for Chiyu. Naturally, they would not ask what Zagru had said to Chiyu. Yamu looked at Chiyu with some worry. She said, Master's words are at least 70% trustworthy. With Master's profound dharma, you can't be wrong. What should we do now? Chiyu said, What else can we do? You should inform America as soon as possible and let them make more preparations. Increase the number of nuclear bombs and bring as many as possible into space. Also, ask how many ordinary experts there are. I will take care of things here in the Yanhuang Republic. Let's end our joint training here. If you want to continue to stay, I won't object. However, I have to go to Germany. This time, you won't object to me using the power of the Covenant of Darkness, right? Yamu nodded and said, The world is in danger. It seems that we can only trust them this time. However, do you really not need me to go with you? His Majesty the Pope just told me that there is a very powerful force in the Covenant of Darkness. I'm really afraid that they will harm you. Chiyu glanced at Yamu and said coldly, No need. I'll be thankful if you don't harm me. I'll be safer without you going with me. The Pope frowned and said, Mr. Chi, our cooperation this time is absolutely sincere. Miss Yamu said that because she cares about you. Chiyu said indifferently, No need. If it's a sincere cooperation, then cooperate with each other during the mission. There's no need for anything else. Are the two of you staying or leaving? The Pope and Yamu looked at each other. He saw a deep sadness in Yamu's eyes and said, Since Mr. Chi is going to Germany and Master is not here, there's no point for us to stay. Why don't we leave together? We can also return to the West and make preparations. When the time comes, before the operation, we will meet again in America. Chiyu nodded and said, Since you have decided to leave, then I won't keep you. You guys go first. I still have some things to take care of before I go to the Covenant of Darkness. Chiyu was quite confident about going to the Covenant of Darkness to seek help. Not to mention his ambiguous relationship with the Princess of Hell, even if it was the survival of the entire world, the Covenant of Darkness had no reason to refuse. Frankly speaking, from a certain point of view, Chi Yu's impression of the Covenant of Darkness was better than that of the Vatican. The Pope walked towards his 4 cardinals, but Yamu did not move. She looked at Chi Yu and said in a low voice, "Can we talk?" Chi Yu looked at her and said indifferently, "What's there to talk about? If it's serious business, then say it here. Don't forget, you once said that after this mission, if we are still alive, the unfinished battle at the top of Mount Everest will continue." Without waiting for Yamu to speak, he took the initiative to express his position. Chi Yu completely cut off Yamu's last hope. Looking at Chi Yu with a complicated gaze, Yamu could not say a word for a long time. Her eyes looked a little hazy, and her purple eyes were so poignant and beautiful. Chi Yu turned his head away and no longer looked at Yamu, because he was afraid that if he looked into her eyes again, he would be lost in them again. That was something that Chi Yu did not want to see. "Chi Yu, I know you hate me and want to kill me. But, do you have to be so anxious? I want to beg you for one thing. I don't know if it's okay?" "Say no more." Chi Yu directly interrupted Yamu. As he walked towards the Zodiac Guardian God warriors, he said to Yamu, "There's nothing more to say between us. You don't have to beg me for anything. Do you remember that time in Parthenon? You asked me to help you and protect you. But what was the result in the end? Remember one thing, I don't want to have anything to do with you other than hatred. After this mission, we will definitely fight again." Looking at Chi Yu's tall and imposing back, Yamu could only feel regret now. Why did she listen to Mephisto's words? Why did she pursue power so strongly? Between God and love, she chose God. What did she do? She was originally a strong support, but now she had become a mortal enemy. "Chi Yu, you won't even give me a chance to delay my death by a few days? Chi Yu, oh Chi Yu, do you know what I want to beg of you?" Tears uncontrollably rolled down Yamu's face. However, she was already powerless to change anything. Ever since that incident, her relationship with Chi Yu was destined to become a tragedy. Chi Yu returned to his previous position and sat down again. He slowly spread out his mental strength, waking up the Zodiac Guardian warriors and the members of the 12 Zodiac teams from their state of cultivation. Everyone looked at the sky, which was still early, and could not help but feel puzzled. At this time, Chi Yu spoke. "It has been 20 days since the start of the joint cultivation. Whether it is us, the Greek Guardians, or the Vatican, we all need to make preparations before the mission. The joint cultivation has ended. All team leaders, follow me. The rest of you can take a break first. Then, you can choose your state of cultivation." The so-called team leaders were, in fact, the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors. Chi Yu did not even send Yamu and the Pope off. He returned to the villa with his 12 companions. The Pope was very depressed. Ever since he took over the position of Pope, it was the first time that he was not taken seriously. Chi Yu's contemptuous and arrogant eyes deeply hurt him. However, he had to endure it. He knew very well that in the face of the upcoming crisis, or even the hellish crisis that could come at any time, he might have to rely on the power of the East. He had already completely offended Chi Yu. Although there was no turning back now, at least maintaining a relatively peaceful state was much better than being hostile to each other. This was also the reason why he chose to stay even though Chi Yu mocked him so many times on the day he came here. Marty, who was experienced and astute, could not be said to be not scheming. The Pope left the Dragon-Field courtyard with the Cardinal, Yamu, and her Zodiac Guardian warriors. Apart from the Pope and Rain-Eye, who each had their own worries, the others were very excited. In these 20 days of cultivation, they had also obtained a lot of benefit. Although it could not be said that they had made any major breakthrough, the improvement of their own strength was much better than the same amount of time in the past. The energy waves emitted by the joint forces of the 3 peerless powerhouses benefited everyone greatly. Chi Yu stood in the hall, watching the Pope and Yamu leave through the floor-to-ceiling glass. The light in his eyes could not help but shrink, and he slowly clenched his right fist. In order to endure his hatred, He did not know how much effort he had put in to not make a move on Yamu and the Pope. Their hands were stained with the blood of Chi Yu's friends or lovers. Ryue and Ming Ming walked together to Chi Yu's side. They had been with Chi Yu for the longest time, so they understood Chi Yu's feelings the best. Coming to Chi Yu's back, Ming Ming held his hand and said, "Don't think too much about it. They owe us, and they will repay us sooner or later." Chi Yu said indifferently, "I have been waiting for that day to come. It's fine. You don't have to worry about me. I can control the emotions in my heart. I was the one who suggested the end of this joint training." Just now, Grandmaster came and returned to his room to train. Grandmaster brought some bad news. At that moment, he briefly told everyone what Grandmaster Zagru had said to him. "So, now I have to go to Germany and try to get the Dark Parliament to unite. You don't have to worry. The Dark Parliament cannot be a threat to me, and I am not afraid that they will not agree. Before I leave, I have to tell you some things about your family. This time, I will not only go to Germany but also to England. Christie, who has become the new patriarch of the Dracula family, is very powerful and has a good relationship with us. This time, I will also ask for her help. I may not return in 10 days. When the time comes, we will meet in America. I will find you by your spiritual waves." Ming Ming. Ming Ming agreed. Chi Yu said to her, "After I leave, tell Uncle. I also told him where I wanted to go. Our country's preparations are almost done. I believe that in a few days you will be sent to America. After you arrive there, control the members of each team. This mission is not a small matter. Don't make any mistakes." Ming Ming nodded and said, "Don't worry. Brother and I will contact the country. We have almost finished preparing the spacesuit. We will try them on in the next 2 days." Chi Yu turned to Ryue and said, "After I leave, I will have to trouble you here. Everyone's specific arrangements will depend on you and your companions. I think, even without me, you will be able to do well." Ryue smiled and said, "Don't worry. You don't have to worry about anything else. Apart from us, there is still Grandmaster." Actually, she also wanted to go to Germany with Chi Yu. But as the strongest Zodiac warrior apart from Chi Yu, she couldn't do that now. Among Chi Yu's women, she was definitely the big sister. If she showed an expression of reluctance, what would the others do? Therefore, Ryue forcibly restrained her inner feelings. She tried her best to be a good wife to Chi Yu. After Chi Yu warned the others about some things to take note of, he packed his things and left the Dragonfield courtyard quietly without informing the members of the Zodiac squad. This time, he didn't bring the others to the west, not only because he was afraid of mistakes, but also because of the Princess of Hell, Ling'er. Although there was nothing between him and Ling'er, ever since when Ting had sacrificed herself for him, Chi Yu had been extremely concerned about his women. He did not wish for them to suffer even the slightest bit of harm, not even to their mental state. Therefore, he didn't intend to let Ryue and the others know about Ling'er's existence. Planes were completely unnecessary for Chi Yu now. With little Peng and his own Kirin stealth, it was the best stealth plane. However, before leaving, he still had to go to a place. In these 20 days, he hadn't seen his parents. He was about to leave, and it was unknown whether he could return. How could he not go and say goodbye? Because he was about to leave Yanhuang, and this time it would be another half a month. Chi Yu threw away his hatred for Yamu and the Pope, and his heart was filled with longing for his parents. Using Kirin's stealth, Chi Yu flew towards the inner part of the capital as fast as he could. At this time, his parents should be at the Golden Valley Group. Flying in the air, Chi Yu gradually calmed down. Thinking back to everything that had happened since he met Master Zagdio, he couldn't help but feel like he was dreaming. So many things had happened. Every year, and even every day, was more exciting than when he was an orphan. He didn't know if he could come back alive this time. Even if he really died, his life wouldn't be in vain. With the Golden Rock's ability to soar 90,000 li, Chi Yu quickly arrived at the Golden Valley Group. He didn't go in directly. Using his spiritual power, he first checked if his parents were in the Golden Valley group. If they weren't there, there was no point in going in. His luck was good. His parents' auras were in the group. Chi-Yu floated down and landed in a dark corner near the Golden Valley group. He removed the effect of Kiran's stealth and walked towards the group building. He was dressed in black and had a head of white hair. It had become Chi-Yu's signature attire. As soon as he entered the building, he attracted the attention of many people. Using his spiritual power fluctuations, Chi-Yu clearly heard a lot of people talking about him. It was nothing more than talking about his identity. His mood now was not as excited as when he first found out the whereabouts of his parent. He had already calmed down a lot. He just let them talk. There was no need for him to be obsessed with anything. "Hello, Deputy General Manager." The receptionist stood up and bowed respectfully to Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu smiled and nodded as a greeting. He walked directly to the elevator at the headquarters and waited for the elevator to arrive. Since he dealt with the guy surnamed Lee last time, the big conflict within the Golden Valley group had been resolved. That guy surnamed Lee was unlucky. Not only did his assets in the country disappear with his death, but even his things abroad that were related to him were completely destroyed by the Shao squad sent by Chi-Yu. It was as if this person had never existed in the world. Others didn't know about these things, but the senior members of the Golden Valley Group's board of directors had a lot of speculations. Of course, they couldn't think that this was done by Chi-Yu. The only person who didn't get along with the deputy chairman surnamed Lee was the chairman of the board, Chi Tianlei. Therefore, now the senior members of the board of directors were more honest than the other, lest they would end up in the same situation. The entire Golden Valley group operated more harmoniously under such circumstances. The group's performance was also thriving. The elevator arrived. As soon as Chi-Yu walked in, he heard a delicate voice. "Wait a minute, wait for me." Chi-Yu was stunned for a moment. He took out his hat and pressed the button to open the door. A figure ran over in a hurry. As soon as she entered the door, she began to gasp for breath. Seeing this person, Chi-Yu couldn't help but smile. Because the person who rushed over was his sister, Chi Yingying. "Ah, it's you." Chi Yingying naturally also saw Chi-Yu. She naturally learned about Chi-Yu from her parent. Looking at the tall brother in front of her, Chi Yingying suddenly smiled. Not to mention anything else, the terrorist attack against her was resolved by Chi-Yu. She saw with her own eyes how powerful Chi-Yu was. Her impression of this brother could only be described as good. "Yes, isn't it me?" Chi-Yu smiled. Looking at his only sister, his originally stiff face suddenly softened. Chi Yingying was about 1.65 meters tall. She wore a pink dress and carried a small bag on her back. She looked like she had just finished school. She was different from Chi-Yu. If Chi-Yu only inherited the outline of his parents, then Chi Yingying inherited all the advantages of Chi Tianlei and his wife. Her beautiful eyes slightly resembled Chi Tianlei, but her beauty was more like Ying Xiaodia's. She was definitely a standard young and energetic beauty. "Brother," Chi Yingying looked at Chi-Yu and called out affectionately. This call couldn't help but bring a burning warmth to Chi-Yu's heart. Looking at his sister, he really didn't know what to say. He had a sister, and she was still so cute. Gently stroking Chi Yingying's head, he smiled and said, "Girl, did you just finish school?" Chi Yingying slapped away Chi-Yu's hand and said with dissatisfaction, "Don't touch my head. I'm already a big girl, not a little girl." Chi-Yu smiled and said, "Oh? You're already a big girl. Does that mean that you have a boyfriend?" Chi Yingying's pretty face blushed and said, "Of course not. I haven't gone to university yet, and my father doesn't allow me to have a boyfriend. However, the love letters I've received can fill a truck." Looking at her somewhat proud look, Chi-Yu thought to himself, "God knows how many of those love letters you've received are because of my father's assets." At this moment, He couldn't help but remember that Qi Tianlei had once said that he had transferred all of his assets under Qi Yingying's name. He couldn't help but agree. Compared to him, Yingying was definitely more qualified to inherit everything from her parents. Those were things that he didn't need. "Brother, can you do me a favor?" Qi Yingying asked tentatively. Looking at the sly light in her eyes, Qi Yu didn't expose her. He pretended to be surprised and said, "What do you want me to help you with? We're almost at the top floor." Qi Yingying took the initiative to pull Qi Yu's big hand and shook it. She begged, "Brother, it's already noon. Our school will hold a parent-teacher conference in the afternoon. You're also my family. Dad and Mom are so busy. Can you go there in my place?" Qi Yu looked at Qi Yingying and said with a smile, "So it's like this. It seems that someone's grades aren't very good." Qi Yingying's pretty face blushed and said, "I'm also doing it for Dad and Mom. Think about it, if they know that my grades aren't very good, they will definitely be angry. Once they're angry, it will definitely affect their health. That's also something that you don't want to see. Big brother, okay?" Qi Yu looked at her helplessly. He really couldn't refuse his sister's request. He could only nod and said, "Okay, but you have to study hard in the future. I can't be there every time." "That's great. Brother, you're so handsome. You'll definitely shock my classmates." While saying that, she quickly stopped the elevator and pressed the button for the first floor. You don't have lunch? I'm here to say goodbye to Mom and Dad," Qi Yu said. Qi Yingying said, "Anyway, it won't be for a while. We can come back after the parent-teacher conference. We can't go now. If Dad remembers that there's a parent-teacher conference today, I'll be dead. Brother, you treat me to lunch." Qi Yu couldn't do anything to his sister. He had no choice but to agree. The receptionist looked at Qi Yu, who just went upstairs and then came down. She couldn't help but give him a strange look. Qi Yingying pulled Qi Yu's big hand and quickly ran out of the door. "Brother, what car did you drive?" Qi Yingying asked. Qi Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'm going to leave the capital soon, so I didn't drive. Let's take a taxi." Qi Yingying shook her head and said, "No need. Anyway, our school is not far. We can walk there and find something to eat on the way." Looking at Qi Yingying's excited look, Qi Yu's heart was full of warm feeling. She didn't have the arrogance of a rich young lady. She was also very kind to him. Qi Yu couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. However, when Qi Yingying chose the place where they had lunch, Qi Yu couldn't help but be surprised. Because she chose a roadside stall that pushed a cart to secretly buy grilled iron plate. "Yingying, do you like to eat these things?" Qi Yu asked curiously. Chapter 272. Qi Yu picked up a napkin and wiped the sauce off the corner of Yingying's mouth. He smiled and said, "Of course not. I grew up eating this." He couldn't help but recall his childhood. At that time, he had to rely on the state's allowance to survive. After he turned 14, the allowance was no longer given to the orphanage. Instead, it was directly given to him. At that time, he had to scrimp for a long time just to eat a grilled squid. He could still remember clearly that the first time he joined those ruffians was because his boss treated him to a big meal. Now that he thought about it, he found it funny. But at that time, he would feel happy whenever he could eat squid. Rich people might not be happy, but poor people might not be unhappy. Life was real when there was always something to pursue. "Brother, why aren't you eating?" Yingying handed a skewer of squid to Qi Yu when she saw his pensive expression. Qi Yu took the squid with a smile and said, "It's been a long time since I've been so relaxed. Okay, I'll have a big meal with you today. If I can come back next time, I'll bring you to Lawn Street. There are a lot of snacks there." At the mention of Lawn Street, Qi Yu immediately thought of Wenting. That was her favorite place. He felt a slight pain in his heart. "Ting-ting. When are you going to eat snacks with me at Lawn Street again?" After ordering a bottle of beer, Qi Yu and Yingying began to gorge themselves on the food. Sometimes, these roadside food tasted the best, and the two of them ate a total of 100 renminbi from this roadside stall. They only stopped when Qi Yingying was so satisfied that she couldn't eat anymore. "Brother, let's go. It's time to go to school." Qi Yingying naturally held Qi Tianlei's hand and walked along the road. "Brother, did you suffer a lot when you were young?" Qi Yingying asked curiously. Qi Yu smiled faintly as he replied, "It's not as miserable as you think, although the situation back then wasn't too good." Although the situation wasn't good, it wasn't a problem to maintain a basic life with the state's aid. Orphans aren't what you think. Qi Yingying looked at Qi Yu and suddenly asked a question that caused him to be taken aback. "When did you end your virginity?" Qi Yu's face stiffened. He said awkwardly, "Why would a child ask this?" Qi Yingying smiled and said, "I'm just curious. Hurry up and tell me." Qi Yu smiled bitterly. "About a year ago." Qi Yingying asked, "Is it with Sister Yu Guan? You looked so handsome when you took the bullet for her that day. If someone is willing to take a bullet for me, I will definitely marry him." Qi Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You can't say things like that. Your sister Yu Guan is not my girlfriend. She is my girlfriend's brother's girlfriend." It's such a tongue twister. "Brother, could it be that you don't fancy Sister Yu Guan's beauty? When are you going to bring me to see sister-in-law?" Qi Yu thought to himself, "It's better if you don't meet her. If my sister finds out that I have more than one woman, I'll definitely kill her. What would she think of me as her brother?" He said, "There will be a chance in the future." Qi Yingying quickened her steps and rushed in front of Qi Yu. She suddenly turned around. She said seriously, "Brother, tell me honestly, are you in danger?" Qi Yu was taken aback. "Why do you ask?" Qi Yingying said, "When we were eating just now, you told me that if you could come back, you would take me to Lawn Street to eat delicious food. Don't you mean that I'm in danger? Dad told me that you're not an ordinary person. I've seen it myself. Brother, what kind of danger is it? Can't you not go?" Qi Yu walked forward and put his arm around Qi Yingying's shoulder. "Sometimes there are some things that you can't not do. When you grow up, I'll tell you, okay? Don't worry. It was just a slip of the tongue. Nothing will happen. Don't tell Dad and Mom about this, lest they worry needlessly." What a observant girl! She could accurately catch his own slip of the tongue. Qi Yingying's school was not far from the Golden Grain Group. To be able to open a large school in the downtown area of Beijing, the cost of the tuition was obviously not something ordinary people could afford. An aristocratic school. These 4 words flashed through Qi Yu's mind. Before they reached the school gate, they met many students who were returning to school. These students caused a traffic jam on the entire road. It was not that there were too many people, but there were too many cars. Almost every student was escorted by a luxury car. Each and every one of them was well dressed. Although they were wearing school uniforms, the accessories on their bodies were not something that children of the same age could have. Perhaps it was because of the parent-teacher conference, but every student was accompanied by a man and a woman in their 40s. "Yingying, can't you let me be mentally prepared first?" Qi Yu smiled. Yingying asked curiously, "Mentally prepared? What mentally prepared?" Qi Yu said, "You have to let me know the real reason why you don't want Dad and Mom to attend the parent-teacher conference. I don't want to be scolded by the teacher as soon as I enter the door." Qi Yingying giggled and said, "No, the teacher is not that scary. It's nothing. I'm just afraid that the teacher will tell Mom and Dad about my puppy love, so I have to beg you." Puppy love? Didn't you just say you don't have a boyfriend? And you said you will talk about it after you enter university. Qi Yu asked in surprise. Qi Yingying smiled and said, "I just said I don't have a real boyfriend, but I didn't say I don't have any male friends. There are so many classmates, and it feels good to be taken care of. So, a lot of people think they are my boyfriends. I can't do anything about it, I can only let them be. However, who knows what kind of organization they've formed in school just for me." The teacher seemed to be in a difficult position. Because these guys always fight because of me, so this time. Chiyu unhappily looked at her and said, "So you're saying that I'm really a shield? Ying. It's not good for you. Although it's very likely that your classmates are trying to get close to you because of your family background, it's not good for you to not agree to anyone and not reject them." Chi Ying said impatiently, all right, brother, help me this time." Since he was already here, how could he not help? Chi Yu nodded helplessly. However, when he walked into the school, he realized the seriousness of the problem. As soon as he entered the school, Chi Yu was immediately surrounded by more than 10 17 or 18-year-old boys. Looking at their unfriendly appearance, Chi Yu also knew that it was Ying who had caused trouble. "Who are you? You don't seem to be from our school. Ying, what's going on?" The leader was a boy who looked pretty good. He still had a bit of a bookish aura, but the way he spoke was somewhat arrogant. Ying snorted and said, "What does it matter to you? Don't you all want to be my boyfriend? Fine. If you can beat him, I'll agree to it." This girl, once she entered the school, she immediately changed into a different person. No wonder she caused so much trouble. Chi was too lazy to be entangled, so he pulled Chi Ying towards the school building. Those youths did not move, and no one stopped them. They all looked at the ground in a daze. On the smooth cement floor there were actually 2 footprints. Even the lines on the soles were very clear. What Chi Yu left them was absolute shock. Who was this person with dyed white hair? Where did Ying find him? It was indeed worthy of being a noble school. The school gave people a feeling of splendor. There were only 15 students in the classroom where Ying was, but the classroom was 3 times the size of a normal school. Each student sat on a special sofa that was specially designed for ergonomic. It was very beneficial to reducing fatigue. Moreover, there were laptops specially used for teaching on the tables. With such superior conditions, Chi Yu could not help but be envious. Chi Ying looked at Chi Yu strangely. She did not understand why when Chi Yu brought her away, those people did not stop them. Because she was very close to Chi Yu, she did not see the changes on the ground. However, the news that Chi Ying brought a white-haired monster quickly spread throughout the school. Chi Yu and Chi Ying arrived a little early, so there were not many people in the classroom. However, outside the classroom, there were many people gathered to watch the show. But no one dared to provoke Chi Yu. Not to mention other things, Chi Yu's tall and burly figure was not comparable to these young people with rich family backgrounds. "Ying, you seem to be using me." Chi Yu looked at his sister, the light in his eyes became colder. Chi Ying saw that Chi Yu was about to get angry, so she quickly said, "Brother, don't be angry. Actually, there is a reason why I asked you to help. Listen to my explanation, okay?" Chi Yu nodded, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and sat comfortably next to Chi Ying. He said, "I'm waiting for your explanation." Chi Ying whispered, "It's like this. Brother, there is a boy in school who is very powerful. Not only is he good at his studies, but he also seems to have special abilities. Yesterday, when I came to school, I saw him looking at the sky on the playground, and there seemed to be lightning flashing on his body. When I came near and was discovered by him, he seemed to be shocked, and then looked at me with frightening eyes. I skipped school this morning and did not dare to come. Do you think that a person like him will kill me to silence me?" No wonder, so this was the real reason. With Ying's situation in front of her parents, it was indeed impossible for her to be afraid of the boys in school who were chasing after her to hold a parent-teacher conference. "There are also people with special abilities in this school?" Chi Yu's eyes became calm again, and he patted Ying's small hand. He said, "Don't be afraid, as long as I am here, no one can hurt you." As soon as his voice fell, Chi Yu suddenly felt a sharp gaze directed at him. His spiritual force automatically fluctuated, and he immediately locked onto that gaze. Looking in that direction, he saw a student about 1.8 meters tall looking at him. From his body, Chi Yu unexpectedly felt a strong energy fluctuation. Qi Yingying also saw this person's existence and quickly whispered, "Brother, it's him." Qi Yu nodded and said, "Leave this matter to me. You stay here, I'll be back soon." While speaking, Qi Yu stood up and walked outside. The moment he stepped out of the classroom, Qi Yu was immediately surrounded by a group of students. This time, there were a lot more people than before. There were about 40 to 50 of them, and all of them looked at him with unfriendly gazes. It seemed like they were ready to swarm him at any time. Qi Yu stopped and only said a sentence to solve the problem in front of him. "I am Yingying's blood brother, the Golden Grain Group's Deputy General Manager. If you want to pursue my sister, immediately disappear from my sight. I don't like the feeling of being watched." A very cold voice came out of Qi Yu's mouth, and it was especially effective. He deliberately mixed a bit of spiritual force into his voice, so that it would have a greater impact. Sure enough, once they heard that Qi Yu was Yingying's brother, the faces of these young people who were blinded by jealousy suddenly changed. One by one, they smiled and quickly left, returning to their own classrooms. There were a few who wanted to get close to Qi Yu, but when they saw Qi Yu's cold eyes, they also quickly left. In the end, the only one left was the student that Qi Yu felt before. "Did she bring you here?" the young man first asked Qi Yu. Qi Yu knew that his spiritual force just now did not affect him, so he gave a faint smile and said, "If you doubt what I just said, then you're wrong. I really am Yingying's brother. Should we find a place to talk?" The young man proudly raised his head. "Then you first have to have the qualifications." Qi Yu indifferently said, "Qualifications? You're the first person to say this to me." With a flash of purple light, a powerful thundercloud force came out of his body. Although it was only for a moment, the young man clearly felt his body being covered by a paralyzing energy. His face instantly changed as he said in surprise, "You're also a son of thunder?" Qi Yu looked at him in surprise and said, "Son of thunder? Now can we find a place to talk?" The young man nodded and left the school building with Qi Yu. They found a secluded corner in the flower garden next to the school field. "What's your name?" Qi Yu asked. The young man said, "I'm Lei Tao." Qi Yu said, "First of all, I want to apologize for my sister seeing something she shouldn't have seen yesterday. However, I also want to warn you, if you have any bad intentions towards her, then don't blame me." Although his words were threatening, the expression on his face was very gentle. Qi Yu had a good impression of this cool and handsome young man. Lei Tao looked at Qi Yu with a serious look in his eyes. He did not look like a 17 or 18-year-old youth at all. Bad intentions? She saw me using my ability, so she only has two choices. When Qi Yu saw that the young man in front of him could remain so calm, he couldn't help but admire him a bit more. After all, this was an ability user from the East. "Oh? Then what are the two choices?" Lei Tao said, "My father told me that the Lei family are all born with lightning constitutions. In other words, we are the sons of lightning. This secret is very important to our family. If it were to spread, it would be a devastating blow to our family." Qi Yu interrupted him. "I can guarantee this. Yingying won't tell anyone, and neither will I." Lei Tao shook his head. "No, we won't trust anyone so easily. It's because of what I just said that we can't let anyone know that we have Reiki. That day, I had a breakthrough in my energy, so I had no choice but to use my lightning. I didn't expect Qi Yingying to see it. Father said that besides our closest kin, no one else can know that we have Reiki. Since she saw it, then she can only choose to become my closest kin or die." A cold light flashed across Qi Yu's eyes. He could not help but rejoice that he and Yingying had come here today. His eyes flickered as he asked, "Then how can I become your closest relative?" Lei Tao answered without hesitation, "Marry me and become my wife. You'll naturally become my closest kin. At the very least, get engaged now." Qi Yu smiled. "You seem very stubborn." Lei Tao nodded resolutely. Qi Yu said, "But believe it or not, if I find out your Lei family's secret, you'll all die. You'll all die." Lei Tao's heart jumped. He looked at the tall man in front of him. You? Could it be that you're one of them? Chi Yu smiled. I don't know who you're talking about, but I can tell you that they you're talking about are nothing more than ants to me. Do you want to know what true lightning is? How about I take you to see it? Lei Tao cautiously looked at Chi Yu. Although there was no lightning coming from him, the energy fluctuations on his body had clearly become stronger. Chi Yu didn't care about the energy fluctuations. He calmly walked in front of Lei Tao. He reached out with his right hand and grabbed his shoulder. The entire process was no different from a normal person. Lei Tao growled. He quickly raised his right hand to slap Chi Yu's hand. Before his hand even reached him, a numbing energy fluctuation was clearly transmitted. Chi Yu didn't move. He let him slap his hand. Lei Tao only felt that his lightning energy had met with a strong suction force. Following that, his body was no longer under the control of his brain. With a flash of light, Chi Yu brought Lei Tao and quietly disappeared from the school grounds. The next moment, when Lei Tao reacted, he was shocked to find that he was actually in the air. He could only see large patches of clouds under his feet. He couldn't see the ground. If it weren't for those clouds, he wouldn't have been able to tell where the sky was and where the ground was. You. He couldn't help but be shocked. Chi Yu grabbed Lei Tao with one hand and said, "Can your enemies fly? If they can't, then how do you think I compare to them? Watch." As he spoke, Chi Yu's left hand moved. The earth cave seal in front of his chest immediately displayed the effects of the Kirin pearl. It turned completely purple, and the originally clear sky suddenly darkened. He waved his left hand lightly. With a thunderous roar, a snaking bolt of purple lightning descended from the sky. The purple lightning was actually thicker than a water tank. It was extremely powerful, and it was very close. Even Lei Tao, as the son of lightning, was shocked to feel the enormous power contained within it. Compared to him, the gap between them was simply too great. Do you see? This is the true power of lightning. If I'm not wrong, your cultivation process is mainly to absorb the lightning element in the air to strengthen your body. When you need to use it, you can use the lightning element in your body to attack, right? Just holding Lei Tao with his right hand made him feel many things. Lei Tao nodded subconsciously. So that's how it is. Isn't this a cultivation method that all adepts know? Chi Yu shook his head gently. If you continue to cultivate like this, then you will forever be stuck in the lower realm of adept. You must know that human strength is limited, unless you can break through the bottleneck and change your body to be different from ordinary humans. In other words, you can become a Superman. Otherwise, how much lightning element do you think your body can withstand? Lei Tao seemed to be deep in thought. The fear he had felt from being in the air was gradually disappearing. Chi Yu smiled calmly. To reach the upper realm of adepts, what you need is not your own strength, but to fuse with the heavens. The so-called unity of man and nature is not a legend. When you can connect with the power of heaven and earth, then you can be called a strong person. Only then can you be called a strong person. Lightning is the accumulation of the righteous energy of heaven and earth. Only by using the righteous energy of heaven and earth to launch an attack can you achieve the power of a lightning element attack. Lei Tao suddenly understood. I understand now. Thank you, big brother. Lei Tao couldn't help but be in high spirits, a complete change from the cold attitude Chi Yu had when he first saw him. Chi Yu couldn't help but be surprised. This young man was much smarter than he had imagined. Chi Yu smiled. Look, this is another way of using lightning. When your strength isn't enough to command lightning, you must rely on surface attack. That way, your enemies will have nowhere to hide. Kirin's 100 lightning strikes. With a low roar, the purple light lit up once more. With his current strength, it was extremely easy for him to execute the Qilin's 100 lightning strikes. A series of explosions sounded in the air as countless bolts of purple lightning appeared in the space around Chi Yu. Amidst the explosions, It was as if the entire world was being swallowed by the enormous lightning power. Lei Tao was completely stunned. If that bolt of lightning could only shock him, then. Only after witnessing such a grand scene did he truly understand that Qi Yu's every word was true. Qi Yu indeed had the strength to destroy his own clan. How could a human be able to block this kind of heavenly lightning array? Qi Yu gave a slight smile and said, "You've already seen what you should see. Remember what I said before. If you still remember my guidance, help me take care of Yingying in the future. We should go back." Lei Tao only felt his vision blur. When the scenery became clear again, they had already returned to the place where they were in the school compound. It was as if nothing had happened. But Lei Tao's skin was still numb from the strong lightning. This feeling was so real that it made him see a completely different level of strength in the world of cultivation. Qi Yu let go of his shoulder. He patted him twice and said, "You should also go back. If you're smart, don't forget a single word I said." After saying this, he turned around and walked in the direction of the school building. With a putong sound, Lei Tao knelt on the ground. Looking at Qi Yu, he excitedly said, "Big brother, take me as your disciple. No matter what conditions you give. As long as I can do it, I'll agree." Qi Yu did not turn around. His footsteps paused for a bit before he said, "When you can connect with the power of heaven and earth, tell Yingying to bring you to me. My name is Qi Yu." Looking at that black figure, looking at that head of white hair, Lei Tao's eyes were filled with respect. He quickly stood up. He chased after Qi Yu. He was a very smart young man. A smart person would naturally know what to do at this time. Lei Tao respectfully followed Qi Yu back to Yingying's classroom. At this time, the classroom was already full. All 15 students had already arrived. Besides Yingying, the other students' parents were also present. The homeroom teacher was a woman around 30 years old. Her looks could be considered above average. In Qi Yu's eyes, she could barely enter the level of eye candy. As soon as the teacher saw Qi Yu, she couldn't help but frown. "Which class are you from? Don't you know the school rules? You don't need to dye your hair. Why are you trying to act cool with white hair? Go back to your own class." Qi Yu was about to explain, but Lei Tao hurriedly said, "Teacher, he's not a student of our school. He's Qi Yingying's brother. He's here for the parent-teacher conference." The teacher was stunned. She couldn't help but awkwardly say, "Oh, so that's how it is. Then please take a seat. But next time, it's best if your parents come to the parent-teacher conference." Qi Yu lightly said, "I have full authority to represent my parents." After saying this, he directly walked to Qi Yingying's side and sat down. That invisible coldness made everyone present think of the word cool. Although the teacher was a bit dissatisfied, there were so many people at the parent-teacher conference that he didn't have time to argue. Lei Tao respectfully nodded to Qi Yu at the door and then left. Qi Yingying whispered in Qi Yu's ear, "Brother, is everything all right?" Qi Yu smiled. "What? You don't even believe in your brother's ability?" Qi Yingying giggled. "Of course I believe in you. Last time, I personally saw you kill someone with your hair." Qi Yu was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Qi Yingying to see the scene that day. "Yingying, remember, some things can't be said casually. Don't tell anyone, except for your parents. That Lei Tao won't be a threat to you in the future, but you should also keep his matter a secret. If Lei Tao encounters any trouble in the future, you can bring him to the Dragon Field courtyard to seek help. The people there are all my friends." He didn't even listen to what the teacher was saying. He asked for a pen and paper from Qi Yingying and drew a simple map. He also gave her the phone number of the Dragon Field courtyard. Yingying whispered, "Brother, I also want to be as capable as you. Can you teach me?" Qi Yu smiled. Lei Tao just asked the same question. However, he is born with the ability to sense the thunder element, unlike you. I don't know if you can cultivate. Speaking up to this point, Qi Yu's heart suddenly moved. Qi Yingying was his blood-related sister. Then, since he had Kiran's bloodline, Could Qi Yingying also? Chapter 273. However, Qi Yu was soon disappointed because although Qi Yingying's body was very healthy, there was no trace of Qiren's aura. There was also no elemental energy fluctuation, just like a piece of white paper. Qi Yu frowned and said, Yingying, it is not impossible for you to cultivate, but it is not easy to achieve success. I don't know if you have heard of the saying, those who are born with knowledge are the best. In traditional understanding, those who are born with knowledge don't seem to exist, but in the real sense, almost all strong people are born with knowledge. In other words, before they could become stronger, there was a prerequisite, and that was that they had this special ability in their bodies. Acquired cultivation is only to amplify the innate ability. Qi Yingying listened to Qi Yu's description of the mystery of cultivation and couldn't help but be interested. She asked, Brother, then I have no chance at all? Qi Yu said, It is not that there is no chance, but it is very difficult. However, if you are willing to work hard, at least your body will be much stronger than an ordinary person. I can try my best to turn your body into one that is born with knowledge, but at the same time, you need to work hard to achieve result. Okay. Brother, I will definitely work hard. Perhaps because she was a little too excited, Qi Yingying's voice was a little louder, causing others to look in their direction. The teacher's face sank and said, Student Qi Yingying, do you have any questions? Qi Yingying stuck out her tongue and hurriedly shook her head. The teacher's gaze fell on Qi Yu and said, Student Qi Yingying's grades in the class have always been average. When you go back, you need to work harder. Qi Yu nodded, indicating that he understood. The teacher continued her long speech, while Qi Yu was already thinking about how to help his sister become stronger. After thinking for a while, in order not to disturb the parent-teacher meeting, Qi Yu took a piece of paper from Qi Yingying and wrote on it, Water, fire, wind, thunder, 4 kinds of energy, choose one you like. Remember, after you choose, you can never give up or change it. Qi Yingying looked at the 4 words, water, fire, wind, and thunder. He couldn't help but hesitate. He looked at this and then at that. She ruled out lightning, perhaps because Lei Tao had the ability to use lightning. Just when Qi Yu thought she was going to choose the water element that was more suitable for girls, Qi Yingying circled the fire element. Brother, I want this. Qi Yu could not help but ask curiously. Why did you choose the fire element? Don't you think water is more suitable for girls? Qi Yingying shook her head and said, No way, I want to be famous. There were so many benefits to fire. It could also be used for lighting. It can also be used for warmth. Furthermore, it can be used for barbecue when playing outside. With so many uses, of course I'll choose it. Qi Yu was speechless as he looked at his sister. She actually cultivated for the sake of barbecuing. This was really too much of an idea. However, he soon felt relieved. Qi Yingying's thoughts proved that she didn't have any competitive spirit, which was a very good result. No matter how much she cultivated in the future, it wouldn't cause too much trouble. The parent-teacher conference lasted for a full 2 hours before it ended. In the end, the teacher specially talked to Qi Yu. When she learned from Qi Yingying that Qi Yu was the deputy general manager of the Golden Valley Group, the way she looked at Qi Yu suddenly changed. At first, she told Qi Yu to control Shu Yingying and not let her have too much contact with boys in school. Later, she began to probe about her situation and even asked if she was married. Qi Yu impatiently dealt with it for 20 minutes before he and Yingying escaped from the abyss of suffering. When leaving the school circle, Qi Yu couldn't help but think of the situation when he was in school. As an orphan, the biggest advantage was that he didn't need to invite his parents to the parent-teacher conference. Of course, it was also his greatest pain. On the way back to the Golden Valley Group, Qi Yu said to Yingying, Yingying, if you want to learn the method of cultivation, I have no objection, and I will guide you wholeheartedly. However, there are some things you must firmly remember, and you must not violate them. First of all, when you have extraordinary strength, you must not easily show it in front of ordinary people, unless there is a special situation or your safety is in danger. Ying nodded and said, I understand. People with special abilities are like Big Brother, they want to be hermits, right? Yu smiled and said, the second point is more important. In the process of cultivation, you must not be impatient. It is better not to cultivate than to show off. Otherwise, if there is a danger, then your life will be in great danger. Do you understand? Ying said, Big Brother, are you talking about cultivation deviation? Yu said, something like that. As long as you remember these 2 points, and correct your mentality, then there will be no other problems. I still have a lot of things to do now, I can't always accompany my parents. I also hope that you can have a certain level of strength, so that you can be the closest to protecting my parents. They are already old, I can at most improve their physical condition, make them healthier, but I can't let them start cultivating again. I'll lend this to you for the time being. As he said that, Yu took off the relic bead from his left wrist and put it on Ying's hand. Towards this little sister of his, he could be said to be very careful. With the protection of the relic bead, it would not be easy for her to go into cultivation deviation. Ying didn't understand and asked doubtfully, Big Brother, you are so stingy. Why don't you give it to me? Yu smiled bitterly. It's not that I don't want to give it to you, but this bracelet has an extremely precious meaning. It was given to me by a good friend. Don't be fooled by its ordinary appearance. Its preciousness is not something that money can compare to. This bracelet is called the relic bead. It is made from the Buddhist relics of 10 generations of Buddhist masters after their cremation. It has the effect of calming the mind and dispelling evil. It is most suitable for beginners like you. You must take good care of it. You must not lose it. Otherwise, Big Brother will not be able to explain it to that friend. Seeing how serious Yu was, Ying couldn't help but feel nervous. So precious. Big Brother. Don't worry, I will definitely carry it with me at all times. Hey, there seems to be a warm flow of air on it, it feels very comfortable. Yu smiled slightly, saying, in the future you will feel more of the benefits it brings. Since you have chosen fire, then before I leave, I will first teach you the cultivation method of fire. Practice according to the method I said. When I come back, I want to check your cultivation progress. Ying giggled. He said, all right. We are here, let's go in. As soon as they entered the Golden Valley building, the receptionist took the initiative to greet them. Yu respectfully said, Deputy General Manager, the chairman said that you should immediately see him when you come back. Yu knew that his father must have already known of his return, so he agreed and brought Ying to the top floor of the Golden Valley building. Ying Xiaodai just happened to be in Qi Tianlei's office, seeing her son and daughter return at the same time. She couldn't help but smile. I heard from the subordinates that you have already been here today. You've already been here today, why did you come back and leave? Ying stuck out her tongue, frankly said, I pulled Big Brother away, let him accompany me out for a walk. There is a parent-teacher meeting this afternoon, you are all so busy, so I asked Big Brother to go. How could Qi Tianlei not understand his daughter's little trick? But he didn't say anything. He didn't have too much hope for his daughter's studies. It's good that you are back, I haven't seen you for so many days, what are you busy with? Yu smiled bitterly in his heart, Dad, it's better not to tell you what I am busy with, otherwise will you let me go to space to adventure? He hurriedly said, there are some confidential matters to deal with. It's almost over, in another half a month, I will definitely come back to accompany you. I will be leaving in a while, I can't accompany you for dinner. Ying was stunned for a moment, only then did she understand how tight her brother's time was. She couldn't help but regret pulling Yu away for the parent-teacher meeting, so that her brother had less time to reunite with his parents. Sure enough, Ying Xiaodai said with some disappointment, you are leaving so soon. It's still the same words, come back. Don't do anything dangerous anymore. We are willing to compensate the country. Yu said with a smile, It's okay, Mom, this is not a problem of the country, but there are some things I must do. If he really wanted to stay away from trouble, it was not impossible, the country could not restrict him. However, the asteroid was about to hit the Earth, could he really leave? The answer was definitely no. Sighing in his heart, he continued to speak to Chi Tianlei and his wife. Ying just told me that she also wants to learn some self-defense skills. I have checked her body, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Before I leave, I will first teach her the cultivation method. Dad, Mom, if you have any work to do, go ahead. Chi Tianlei shook his head and said with some excitement, It's okay, your mom and I can do our work at any time, and we can also not do it at any time. I have always been very interested in your special abilities. Can this also be learned? Chi Yu said with a smile, It might not be possible for others. But if it is me teaching, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Chi Tianlei thought for a moment, then said, Then can I and your mom learn? To be honest, when I was young, I admired those with special abilities. Chi Yu hesitated for a moment, then said, It's not completely impossible, it's just that you are a bit older, so you won't be able to achieve too much. Chi Tianlei said with a smile, We don't need to achieve anything. Having a pair of children like you is the greatest achievement for me and your mom. We just want to experience what it feels like to be a Superman. If it doesn't work, then forget it. Looking at the light of hope in Chi Tianlei's eyes, Chi Yu couldn't help but grit his teeth and said, All right then. I will try, you two should also try. If you can achieve some small achievements, you can at least defend yourself. It was good for parents to have self-defense abilities, and the cultivation of energy would greatly prolong their lives, so that their body functions wouldn't easily fail. The same question appeared in front of Chi Tianlei and his wife. Chi Yu asked them what kind of energy they wanted to choose to cultivate, and the choices were still the 4 types of energy that Chi Yu was good at. Ying Xiaodai did not hesitate to choose water, this was something that Ying was not like her. After Chi Tianlei hesitated for a moment, he chose wind. When Chi Yu asked them why, Ying Xiaodia's reason was very simple. Because water was the source of life, she naturally liked water, so she directly chose it. Chi Tianlei's reason reflected his mood as the chairman of the Golden Valley Group's board of directors. Because he longed for freedom, and wind was undoubtedly the freest of the 4 types of energy. Looking at his excited parents and sister, Chi Yu secretly smiled bitterly in his heart. The 3 of them chose 3 types of energy that they couldn't use. It was not an easy thing to help them with enlightenment. After all, they were just ordinary people. It was easier said than done to quickly improve their abilities. However, Chi Yu didn't hesitate for too long. After Chi Tianlei told the security outside not to let anyone disturb them, the family of 4 went inside the room that was usually used to rest. Chi Yu asked his parents and sister to sit cross-legged on the bed. After thinking for a moment, he said, Later, you must stabilize your mind. No matter what happens, don't resist, just quietly accept it. Also, Dad, Mom, you're a little old, remember not to be too hasty when cultivating. Every time you cultivate in the future, it's best if you can be together. With the protection of the relic bead that I gave to Ying, you'll be much safer. After reminding his parents and sister, Chi Yu asked them to close their eyes and calm their minds. Looking at his 3 relatives in this world, Chi Yu revealed a warm smile because he had already thought of a way to help them awaken. Although they couldn't become strong like the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors, they could at least use their bodies to absorb the energy molecules in the air to enhance their own strength. Taking a deep breath, he adjusted the energy in his body. During this period of cultivation, not only did his thundercloud force completely reach the 8-cloud realm, it also greatly improved his origin of nature energy. Although the improvement of origin of nature couldn't be seen on the surface, Chi Yu could feel that under the situation of photosynthesis, origin of nature had already undergone a qualitative change. There was a huge improvement in all aspects of origin of nature. The three types of energy chosen by his parents and sister were the ones that he had reached the 8-cloud realm, so relatively speaking, it wouldn't consume too much energy. He just had to be careful during the process of awakening so that his powerful energy wouldn't harm their bodies. With the mentality that he didn't want to make mistakes, Chi-Yu began to control the energy. Green light emitted from his body. This was not the aura of origin of nature that was released during the joint cultivation, but the true origin of nature energy. That was Chi-Yu's origin of nature energy. The green light shone and slowly enveloped the bodies of Chi Tianlei and the other two. The three of them were shocked at the same time, and their expressions became calmer. Under the effect of the origin of nature energy, their bodies began to be truly transformed. Chi-Yu wasn't in a hurry. While releasing energy, he pulled over a chair and sat down. Using his spiritual power, he carefully felt the changes in his parents' and sisters' bodies under the transformation of the origin of nature. At this time, the transformation of the origin of nature was much easier than before. After all, the three people Chi-Yu was facing were all ordinary people. In addition, the energy of his origin of nature was much stronger than before, so the transformation became much easier. Faint energy flickered. Every time Chi-Yu increased his energy, the effect of the transformation of the origin of nature would become better. To be cautious, he first strengthened the meridians of the three people. Then he slowly began to transform their internal organs, making them stronger. This way, when he injected energy later, it would be easier for them to accept it. As the range of the transformation of the origin of nature energy increased, Chi-Yu knew that it was time. Under the effect of the origin of nature, Chi Tianlei and the other two had entered a mysterious state of meditation. With Chi-Yu's spiritual power control, they couldn't feel anything from the outside world at all. Chi-Yu raised his right hand and quickly slid his left hand across the meridian. Suddenly, blood burst out. Under the urging of his energy, a column of blood suddenly spurted out. Chi-Yu was already prepared. Under the effect of his earth-wind thundercloud force, the blood that spurted out was cleverly collected in midair, so that it wouldn't fall to the ground and be wasted. That was Kiran's blood, after all. It was not inferior to any precious treasures of heaven and earth. Not only did it contain the energy of Kiran's bloodline, but it also contained the energy of the origin of nature. Speaking of which, Chi-Yu's current body was probably not as strong as the legendary Tripitaka. However, his muscles, bones, and skin were extremely tough. Other than himself, if anyone else wanted to hurt his body, they would have to kill him first. However, in this world, how many people had the strength to kill Chi-Yu? The blood split into 3 parts in the air and floated out. Under the clever control of the energy, Chi Tianlei, his wife, and Chi Yingying opened their mouths slightly. The blood flashed and entered their bodies. Chi-Yu's face was a little pale. Even if he was the powerful king of the Zodiac, as long as he still had a human body, blood was the source of life. Losing 1/10 of his blood at once was not a small burden to him. However, he could not afford to relax at this moment. He circulated the origin of nature at full force, and under Chi-Yu's control, his energy began to move in a frenzied rhythm. This time, with the Qilin blood as the foundation, he did not need to be as careful as before. A faint layer of silver light appeared on the surface of Chi Tianlei and the other two's bodies. At that time, it was Kiran's energy. The blood that Chi-Yu gave them was not a bloodline, so they did not have Kiran's power. However, under the influence of the energy in Kiran's blood, their bodies had begun to be completely transformed. Chi-Yu could clearly feel that the transformation speed of the three's bodies was rapidly increasing. He could not help but smile in satisfaction. If he did not use his blood, the transformation could still be carried out, but the effect would be much worse than now. Just now, he suddenly remembered that after he fed his blood to Ming Ming's strength had greatly increased, so he thought of this method. His life was given by his parents, So what was wrong with giving some blood back to them? Perhaps it was because they were originally a family, and because their bloodlines were interlinked. When they received the energy from Chi Yu's blood, it was very smooth, and there was not a trace of discomfort. The transformation had entered the most critical moment. The dark green light became more and more intense. Chi Yu urged his 3 types of thundercloud force to float out, and according to the choice of Chi Tianlei and the other 2, he quietly entered their bodies. Because there was no time to explain the cultivation method in detail to them, what Chi Yu needed to do now was to let them familiarize themselves with the direction and order of the energy circulation. With Chi Yu's powerful strength and the meridians in their bodies that had been transformed, the 3 different types of thundercloud force attacked the 8 extraordinary meridians in the bodies of Chi Tianlei and the other 2 at the same time. This time, it did not feel comfortable, and the 3 of them had varying degrees of pain on their faces. Among them, Ying Xiaodia's face had the least pain, because the water thundercloud force was the softest of the 4 types of thundercloud force. Although the impact was also strong, it felt much better. Chi Tianlei was second. The activity of the wind element made him suffer a lot. The one who suffered the most was Chi Yingying. The fire thundercloud force that she chose was a very violent energy, and the scorching airflow made her feel as if she had entered a furnace. It was as if magma was circulating in her body, and with every circulation, Chi Yingying would be drenched in sweat. Her clothes were completely soaked in sweat. Although Chi Yu could not bear it, he knew that this was a critical moment, and he must not stop. Otherwise, everything he had done before would be in vain. The beginning of their awakening was to leave a deep impression on them. At that moment, he used his mental strength to call out to the 3 of them to feel the direction of the energy circulation, while continuing to operate the 3 types of thundercloud force that had entered their bodies. Time went by, from afternoon to night. When the 3 types of thundercloud force had circulated in their bodies 49 times and completely opened up their 8 extraordinary meridians, Chi Yu stopped the input of energy. Under the effect of the source of nature, Kiran's blood, and Kiran's thundercloud force, the bodies of Chi Tianlei and the other 2 could be said to have been completely reborn. A faint trace of energy had begun to circulate in their modified meridians, slowly absorbing the energy molecules in the air. A trace of faint energy had already begun to circulate in their modified meridians, slowly absorbing the energy molecules in the air. The 3 of them had entered a normal state of cultivation. As for the future effect, it would depend on their respective efforts. Of course, at this time, the 3 of them had entered a normal state of cultivation. Of course, at this time, it was still impossible for Chi Yu to teach them any skills. All skills required a huge amount of energy as a backing, and what they needed now was a process of condensing energy. What made Chi Yu gratified was that after the qualitative change, with the effect of the source of nature energy and Kiran's blood, his parents' bodies seemed to be no longer limited by their age after being modified. At this time, although they had sweated a lot because of the body modification just now, their parents seemed to have become a lot younger. Like Yingying, they had smooth skin, and the surface of their skin was flowing with brilliance. At this time, they were no longer ordinary people. Quietly standing up, Chi Yu found a pen and paper, and simply wrote down the things to pay attention to in cultivation and the cultivation method. He was not afraid of being seen by others. Those who had not undergone the initial awakening would not be of any use even if they saw these. 5 hours of wholehearted cultivation made Chi Yu feel a little tired. The output of energy was not large, but the consumption of blood had a certain impact on his body. It would at least take a whole day for the lost blood to fully recover. However, there was no time for him to delay now. Before the start of the mission, he had to go to Germany and England separately, and the distance between these 2 countries was not close. Quietly opening the window, Chi Yu took one last look at his parents and sister, deeply imprinting their appearance in the depths of his mind. Only then did he soar into the air and fly into the distance, at the same time wishing them well in his heart. No matter how difficult this mission was, even if he had to pay with his life, he must complete it. For the sake of his family and friends, Earth must not be destroyed. Qi Tianlei, Qi Yingying, and Ying Xiaodai did not wake up until the next morning. When they felt that their bodies were full of vitality, and every inch of their muscles was full of strength, they all knew that they had changed. They were no longer ordinary people, and these were all given to them by Qi Yu. Feeling the faint salty taste in their mouths, they did not think that Qi Yu used the power of blood to help them transform. At this time, this was the only feeling in the hearts of Qi Tianlei and the other two. Their son had left again. When would he come back? Although they were close relatives, Qi Yu still gave them the feeling that he was like a mysterious dragon whose tail was nowhere to be seen. Sitting on Little Peng's back, Qi Yu slowly gathered his energy. He decided to go to Germany first. After all, there might be changes in the Dark Parliament, and he might need more time to solve the problem. Therefore, he chose Germany. As long as the problem over there was resolved, it would be much easier to talk to Christie. Of course, he also thought of calling Christie, but after the Dracula castle was destroyed, he could no longer contact her. Regarding Christie's encounter, Qi Yu was still somewhat worried, so he decided to go there personally. Sitting on Little Peng's back, the light in Qi Yu's eyes became much brighter. The energy consumed in his body had been completely recovered, and now all he needed was to wait for his blood to recover. The function of producing blood wasn't something that could be assisted by the source of nature. It was the human body's instinct. However, Qi Yu was strong, and his body was different from ordinary people. By the time he arrived in Germany, he would be able to recover. Qi Yu left, but all the countries in the world were operating at high speed. The impending global crisis forced all countries to abandon their prejudices against each other. No one wanted to die, nor did they want the world to be destroyed. For the sake of a common goal, the efficiency of the country's government agencies had increased by many times. This was what it meant to work wholeheartedly. Little Peng's flying speed was very fast, at least not slower than the Gulfstream 5. When the sun shone on the Earth the next day, Qi Yu had already arrived on the other side of Earth, Berlin, Germany. Stepping on solid ground, Qi Yu stretched his body and felt very comfortable. Although a night of cultivation still didn't allow his thundercloud force to break through the final calm, as he passed by the sea and absorbed a lot of water attribute energy molecules, he felt very comfortable all over. Now, the energy molecules of other attributes were just converted into the energy of the source of nature. Anyway, that was the energy of nature. Since he couldn't improve his thundercloud force, it would be good to improve his aura of nature. He still remembered the black beer and roasted pork knuckle in Germany. As soon as he entered the city of Berlin, he immediately found a place to eat. Although there was a certain problem with the language, after staying in Greece for so long, Qi Yu could still complete simple English under Yamu's guidance. At least, there was no problem in using it to eat. Since his strength reached a certain level, Qi Yu no longer smoked and drank well. However, the mellow taste of the German beer was something he couldn't give up. Drinking the delicious black beer, Qi Yu felt very comfortable all over his body. The energy in the beer was directly absorbed by his body. Coupled with the delicious roasted pork knuckle, Qi Yu rarely had a big meal. While drinking, Qi Yu thought about the problem between himself and Ling'er. During the battle on Tianxiang Mountain, Ling'er's performance clearly showed that she had a good impression of him. However, the main problem now didn't seem to be Ling'er. After all, although Ling'er's strength was not bad, there was still a certain gap compared to him. However, as Ling'er's guardian angel, the fallen angel Lucifer, was very strong. Although he had made a lot of progress and obtained a divine artifact, it would still be very difficult to defeat him. After all, even Qi Yu was inferior to Lucifer. Moreover, the Bull Demon King had gone overboard last time. It was impossible for Lucifer not to hate him. Therefore, if he wanted the Covenant of Darkness to participate in this mission wholeheartedly, the first thing he had to solve was the problem of Lingere. The second thing he had to solve, which was also the most important, was the possible obstruction from Lucifer. Lucifer, I hope you don't do that. Otherwise, I will turn you, the fallen angel, into a death angel one day.